Are you a little tipsy? Yeah, Chris will be sitting there. I don't know. Are you planning on hanging out over there? Or are you gonna? Unmute or mute? And I started the recording, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
So how to watch what you say? Yes. Especially you. That's always for me.
Well, let's see if.
That's probably about as good as we're gonna get right there.
Yeah, I agree.
How are you? Oh, there's no foot there. That's why. There's a sign-in sheet if anybody wants to sign in, who hasn't signed in. Here. I believe so. And it looks like everybody is here for either Freeman or the Pearson versus Alec case.
Okay.
I believe so. Okay.
I'd like November 2nd, 2021 meeting of the Ohio Elections Commission to order.
Ms. Cunningham, Ms. Kaufman, Mr. Brommer, Ms. Tavares, Mr. Norman, Vice Chair Beatty, Chair Kreitz. All members are present.
Very much. Can we move that computer so we don't hear that computer the whole time?
Turn the screen volume down.
If I do, watching. The first item on the agenda this morning is the approval of the regular meeting minutes of September 23, 2021. Everyone should have received a copy of them. Are there any changes or amendments to it? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve. As amended. To approve.
Second.
Discussion, all in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye. Aye. With same sign, motion carries. Moving on to hearings, the first case is 2021 G-001, Purdy versus Simeon et al. Mr. Richter.
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, this was a case involving the Alliance Area Democratic Club. And Ms. Purdy is, I think, the new president of the organization, chairman of the organization. She filed against the prior president and the organization itself. We're trying to understand where it was financially. We set it for hearing. I requested bank records that she was indicating she had a hard time getting. Got those eventually from the bank, gave them to her. And she reviewed them and is now satisfied with where it is financially. My understanding from talking to her in emails is that she has discussed this with Mr. Simeon and indicated that's what she was planning on doing, and that she was satisfied with where they were, and so she would like to see the matter withdrawn. Now, because of where it is in the stage of proceedings, we would have to act on that withdrawal if the commission would decide to do so, but I would have to allow the complainant to withdraw. I'm answering any questions you have.
Questions for Mr. Richter? If not, is there a motion to go ahead and accept the recommendation of the executive director? Second? Second. All right, for the discussion on the motion, all in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Mr. Richter, before we get into preliminary reviews, is there any reason to take any of these cases?
I would like to go out of order, yes, in an effort to move along quickly. The next case I would call forward to the commission's attention is 2021 R-284. It is a late filing referral from Cuyahoga County against the Friends of Nikisha Dickerson and Nicole Dickerson treasurer. Ms. Nickerson requested the matter move forward. This matter was scheduled for October 28th. She submitted a specific request asking it to be moved forward. She reflected in her response that the report was mailed, received by the Board of Elections timely. That's the basis for the referral. She indicates that they expected this to be delivered, but unfortunately it wasn't. I discussed with her, my recommendation, what the process was. She was satisfied with my recommendation, find a violation, impose a fine of $50, or at least she didn't express objection. And so I would recommend that the commission find a violation and impose a fine of $50.
Thank you, Mr. Richter. Questions of Mr. Richter?
My question would be, I know we've talked about imposing a fine versus good cause, and in this case, it appears that they have to take all steps necessary to do it. They need to comply. It seems to me that this would fall more into the good cause category as opposed to a fine only because it was sent out 6 days before it was due. That's on the postal service, not her. That's just my opinion.
And, again, I'm kind of developing into the recommendations you have made. I looked at it this way, and oftentimes people will mail, expecting it to get there, and sometimes it doesn't. I can't disagree with your position, and if you would want to go in a different direction, that's fine by me.
Other questions or comments?
I'm inclined to agree with Mr. Norman, and I would note that the post office just changed their regular mail service to 5 business days for regular delivery. Because this has been a continuing problem, and I know in my office, it's this. Try to use the post office to get it.
Any other questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
I move that we find a violation, but for good cause, not impose a fine or refer this for further prosecution.
We have a motion to find a violation, but for good cause not impose a fine or refer for prosecution. Is there a second? Second, Mr. Burris. For the discussion on the motion? If not, all in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Next case is case 2021D-008, Cabral versus Zabrowski. Mr.
This is a complaint alleging that the respondent did not place proper disclaimer on campaign literature, primarily a car magnet. Respondent submitted a response that indicates she thought magnets were produced without a disclaimer. She thought there was an exemption. That's for smaller magnets. This was essentially the size of a bumper sticker. She explained the facts and circumstances further. I provided it to you. My recommendation here is find a violation of $50.
Thank you. Questions of Mr. Richter? Entertain a motion.
I move that we follow the executive director's recommendation.
All right. Do we have a second to the motion?
Second.
Second, Mr. Cromwell. We've got a motion that's been duly seconded that would go ahead and find a violation and close the fine of $50. No further discussion on the motion. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right, moving on to the reconsideration group, case 2018 R-579, Janice Evans et al. Mr. Richter.
Yeah, this has been pending for a while. I think we got kind of caught up in the whole COVID situation, unfortunately. But anyway, the commission originally found a violation, imposed a $25 a day fine in October 2018. Subsequently, the respondent filed reports, requested reconsideration. In her explanation, she said she was running for re-election, utilizing the name for campaign from a previous run for office, and I realized all the filing obligations that were with that. She did file it. She thought she just moved forward and not file it as a supervisor. She committee. So subsequently, she ran into a problem. Anyway, my recommendation is the commission reconsider the matter, vacate the previous imposition of a per diem fine, and instead impose $100.
Questions for Mr. Ritter?
No, I don't have it from, I'm assuming it was a fire.
No, it says prior to none. This is one of those where, going back to the early days of the commission, unless there were extreme circumstances that obligated me to recommend a good cause of reconsideration matter, former commission members have always said, you're gonna bring a case back to us, and we've gone through all the process the first time, they didn't deal with it the first time, and we're back on reconsideration, I want you to impose a fine. They'll bear. Or no. Not in Philadelphia. He'd be offended if I said in Philadelphia. Dover, yeah, it was in Dover. And so that's why I come back with a fine recommendation.
Thank you. Further questions of Mr. Ritter? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
I move that we follow the executive director's recommendation.
We have a second.
Second.
We have a second, Mr. Forrest. Ms. Kaufman, I apologize. Further discussion on the motion? All in favor of the motion to follow the executive director's recommendation, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right, I need to make the record on the next two cases. Next case is the preliminary review, case 2021G-007, Pearson et al. Versus American Legislative Exchange Council et al. The record needs to reflect that I'm recusing myself because one of the respondents is a partner of counsel in my law firm. So professionally, I'm conflicted, so I will be recusing myself from that proceeding, and I would ask that the record so reflect. With respect to the next case, which is Hicks versus Freeman et al., 2020G-019. Again, because of the professional conflict, I have recused myself throughout the hearing of this matter, and I've continued to do so, and I'd ask that the record reflect my recusal. With that making of the record, I'm going to hand the gavel over to the vice chair. Go ahead and conduct the proceedings on those two matters, and I'd like to have the record reflect that I'm exiting the hearing.
Before you depart, I know these are the only two remaining matters on the docket. Would it be fair to say that we could excuse Mr. Christ for a remainder of the day, other than we get these closed and make at the end of the meeting, so he doesn't have to sit in the hallway?
Absolutely. I see no reason for him to remain, although he's always very gracious in doing so. If there's any business that anyone has for the end of the meeting, I suggest maybe we should just advance it off the agenda and discuss it now so that we.
I appreciate both your comments. I have great deal of experience sitting in the hallway when I was a child. So maybe that's why I'm so patient. I have a lot of experience. But is there anything else to be escalated?
Aside from announcing that the next meeting of the commission will be October 28th, 2021, I am not aware of it. There's nothing else that I placed on the agenda or I'm otherwise aware, no.
Thank you.
Do we need to move those two, or do we just allow him to go?
I'll
He's
move
made
to,
the record for me.
yeah,
He's still playing.
Yeah.
I'll move to excuse for the remainder of the meeting, just so,
Second.
Go ahead and answer this.
thank you.
Aye. All in favor?
Aye.
Please note my abstention.
And the one, and the exception and the raised hand.
My thanks to the.
And the raised
commission for
hand.
not requiring me to sit out in the hall. Thank you, Michael.
Mr. Vice Chair, Chair, members of the commission, case number 2021G-007. The complainants alleged the respondent organization, the American Legislative Exchange Council, violated Ohio's campaign finance by providing certain benefits to certain legislative members. In addition to those legislative members, three legislative members, one from the Senate, two from the House of Representatives were also included for having accepted that alleged improper benefit. So we have received responses from all of them, synopsized them in recommendation here. I've also provided all the responses to you, links. In looking at the notes, it appears that Catherine Mercer, Neil Lewis, are present on behalf of the complainant. I'm presuming you're present on behalf of one of the respondents, Mr. Bry is present on behalf of his client, Mr. Polly, Senate. No one else has signed up, but oh no. Oh, yeah. I'm sure. I saw you on the sorry. So anyway, that's where we are, Mr. Chairman. Here with the commission wanted to hear further from the complainant and Mr. Bry.
Mr. Brad, do you have a presentation for us?
Mr. Chairman,
I didn't see the.
Are we addressing his motion to dismiss first or? Or are we
Is
just?
someone you know?
I see signed in Catherine Mercer and Neil Lewis.
Oh, here.
Okay.
Trying to figure out how to do this one, not right. I'm talking to you all. Oh. Hey, everybody, is this where you want me? All right, thank you. As you can tell, I don't do this all.
Yeah, she is the complainant, she's not guilty, she needs to be sworn. Actually, we kind of do that for
There we go. That way. There we go. Thank you.
Before you proceed, so you know which one, please.
Do you swear and affirm that the testimony will give you the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
All right, well, thank you. So as you said, my name is Catherine Mercer. I'm with Common Cause Ohio. We filed this complaint because we are concerned about the activities of the American Legislative Exchange Council, or often called ALEC. So ALEC was providing to their members, who are state legislators across the country, the system that they were calling CARE Act. Now, this act is essentially the same as voter gravity. It is, in fact, a campaign software. Now, you can give a campaign software and say, for example, well, this isn't a campaign software, but it doesn't mean that it's not. And the best way to look at this is, the disclaimer is clever, that, oh, this is to be used for constituent services, etc. And yet, obviously, as you look at the service, you can see that this is in fact, this kind of service that you would use if you were running an election. So the pitch for this says, the opportunities afforded by CARE, this is the act that ALEC provides, our members can be ahead of their colleagues. Okay, a pitch says they can be ahead of their colleagues. When you are thinking about constituent services and you're governing, no one is thinking about being ahead of their colleagues. It doesn't actually make sense. The other thing to remember is that if someone gives you something and they say it's not what it is, it doesn't change what it is. So, for example, if I gave someone a gun and I said it was a paperweight, it wouldn't mean it wasn't a gun, even if it could serve as a paperweight. Now, the other thing that I wanted to highlight also is, we're very concerned about the actions of ALEC. And specifically, this is the example that I would use. They're making an expenditure, an in-kind expenditure. And it would be like, if any of you all were running for office and I gave you yard signs that said, I know, Richter for Congress or Richter for State House, whatever it is that, if Bill Richter chose not to use those, it would still be an in-kind contribution to Bill Richter, meaning it would be an expenditure from ALEC. And that is why we're here today, because we didn't exactly know what was going on, and we're requesting an investigation to better understand how this works. I also wanted to highlight that there is a whistleblower state legislator who is willing to walk you through the software, if that's what you would like. I'd also like to highlight that you have an opportunity to get more information from Alex to understand exactly which legislators received it, and because it's software, you can actually, on the back end, figure out how it was used. And with that, I appreciate this opportunity to speak to you all. Thanks again.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman of the Commission. I'm Don Bryan here on behalf of one of the respondents, Senator McCollum. The complaint, which says it's a complaint, it's titled, never knew, as to quote what she just said, we don't exactly know what is going on. And that's because we don't exactly know what's going on. And they state in their complaint, which is supposed to be by first law, we have information that there are the investigation records. Because if Mr. McCollum, you have to use this software, then there might be a violation of the state. And if they did this, then there might be a violation of that. Now, we filed an affidavit saying they didn't use it. I think the other reps did as well. And, you know, after the complainant said, well, since you filed an affidavit, maybe you shouldn't be part of the investigation, what they understand the complainant to be. So it's speculative. And a complaint is not, here's a bunch of interesting information that we don't know whether there's a violation or not. You or how Elections Commission do an investigation. I think there must be a misunderstanding about the role of how Elections Commission, when you file something that's called a complaint. If you call something a complaint, you need to know, you know, at least enough information to have a prima facie case, not, you know, if we had some eggs, we could have some ham and eggs if we had some ham, which is essentially what they're doing here. You know, they're saying that if there were a violation, then it would be a violation. Well, that's tautology. It's not a proper complaint. I don't really believe that their premise is correct either. You know, whatever the CARE Act is, it's offered everybody on the same basis who becomes a member and pays dues for the membership. You know, I've got a AAA card, which means I can get discounts on cards. If I use one of those cards in the 4th of July parade and put my signed bride of Congress on it, it doesn't mean that AAA has made an illegal corporate contribution to it. And if I might do that, which is all this, that doesn't mean there should be an investigation about whether AAA has done a corporate contribution. So I agree with the complainant that we shouldn't be part of this. I don't think anybody should. And I also think that it is frivolous. And the best way to prevent this kind of speculative, here's a bunch of stuff that we don't really know exactly what is going on, but you can figure it out, is to find it to be frivolous and a word transparency.
Do the commissioners have any questions on your side?
Yeah, I have some questions. The AlleyCare software itself, does it contain information that could be used for campaign purposes?
To be quite honest, I don't know, neither does my client. He never used it. I think Alec is providing an explanation because they know what the software does. We don't. You know, in other words, there's something that we know what they call it. They say this is a care app for constituent services. Since we've never used it, we've never accessed it, we've never opened it, we can't answer the question, what does it really do? I don't know what it really does. We never use it. Alec presumably knows, and they filed an affidavit suggesting some things that, at least in my cursory examination, were somewhat different than what the complainant had told you in your presentation.
But you would agree that the software package itself has a monetary value to it. And it's given to members of ALEC, correct?
Well, it's not given, they pay for it. They pay for it by paying their dues to ALEC, the same way I pay dues to AAA, and you get benefits from having those dues. So yes, it is something that they exchange value for to get value.
Well, I read that their dues are $100 a year on the ALEC. You're not suggesting that this software is only $100.
I don't know what the software is worth, but I do know that when you have group benefits that are offered to people, most of whom are not going to be using them, you can actually make money if more than you would if you charged a one-off value of, say, You know, how much is it gonna cost me to rent this car if I do it on a one-off? And, you know, it's gonna cost me the full value. And again, if you provide that service to all AAA agents, most of them aren't gonna use that discount, or they're not gonna use it very often. So the AAA actually makes money off of that. In aggregate, even as an individual, there's great value.
Well, what's been troubling me ever since I got the information on this case and had a chance to review it, Alex states that this software cannot be used for campaign purposes, purposes, and that they issued that disclaimer. Would you agree with that?
If that's what Alex says that. I don't represent Alex. You know, neither I nor I have ever used this software. You know, we have no reason to believe that Alex is misrepresenting what the software says, but we certainly can't state on our own knowledge how this software is used. I'd love to say I know that it can't be used for it, but that's the knowledge of ALIC, it's not knowledge of my client. And I do agree with the complaints that whoever should be part, if there should be any investigation at all, I don't think there should be. It certainly should not include Mr. McCauley. Mr. McCauley should be.
Well, I think the question that I have is, is the issue before us the fact that just providing allocation, does that constitute an in-kind contribution, whether or not the person uses it? Let me finish. The other thing, just to follow up to that last question, I don't understand why you would have a disclaimer on a software package not to be used for campaigning. You're saying you don't know anything about that. If it's not to be used for campaigning, I'm not sure why anyone would want the software package.
Well, I think the answer, again, and this is, I'm going to remember what Alex said, it's a constituent concept. There are two things that elected officials do. One is frequently they run for re-election, they're not term. The other is they try to keep in touch with their constituents. I think we're all old enough to remember when you had free franking from Congress, where you weren't allowed to campaign, but you were allowed to have communication to constituents on the government's dime. What you were doing for them and how they can make benefit be used, and how this new road's coming in is wonderful. You know, that's the sort of, in other words, constituent services are something that pretty much everybody who wants to have good constituent relations does. That's not campaigning, that's not electioneering. That is something that goes with being a public official at any level. And so to the extent that Alec accurately represents what its software does, and I have no reason to doubt them, that I think that doesn't make the election communication. The other thing is, let's assume I say, look, I'm willing to loan you this car from my used car dealership and paint right for Congress. So I'm offering this to you. And I've already painted drive for Congress. So can you drive this around? I say, I'm not using it. No in-kind contribution has been made. One was offered, but it was not used. So just because a service is made available that the public official does not use, does not mean that there was any acceptance, that there was any in-kind contribution or anything of value that would need to be reported or scrutinized.
Well, if you know, where would you cross the line using this software into the realm of using it for a campaign? Where would you cross the line?
Again, I don't wish to be perverse, although that does come to me naturally. But you're asking me about what the software does. And we have never used software. So we don't really know, other than what Alex says the software does. And I don't represent Alex, I read the right stuff. But I can't, other than reading what you already have, and you've read it too, I can't tell you what it does.
Okay.
I was, yes, Commissioner Tavares.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I have a question with respect to use of the product. We say that the legislature that you're representing has not used it. What about their staff? Has that been increased?
Examiner Davis says that staff has either in response to a motion to dismiss, that the complainant just said because of the affidavit statement that we probably should not be in the investigation. So I don't think we're disagreeing, but I think both parties say we shouldn't be part of it.
Yeah, I guess the reason I asked the question is because it is, common practice for staff. And so, the legislature is engaged with using the act. It could have been a staff member, having been a staff member for legislators. I know that we do work on behalf of the member of the House of Representatives.
Well, paragraph 13 of the affidavit response signed by Senator Colley says, in fact, I have never used the software program referenced in the complaint for any purpose whatsoever, and neither has my legislative staff. So that question has been answered by my client.
I'm going based on memory, but I thought it would say nobody had ever obtained login credentials to do it.
Certainly.
Commissioner Barnes, I did have a question, I hope. In your experiences, can you think of an analogous situation where members of the legislature were going to offer anything or potential use at all?
Other than conferences, where I've had these conferences, there are many other organizations for legislators that provide opportunities to participate free in a conference, whether it's out of town or whether it's in town. That's common practice. Many organizations, national organizations, that represent various sectors on this thing. I've never heard of it.
And in those instances, I would assume that there's conduct that you do this, don't have to report, they're doing these things, you don't have to report, etc.
Yeah, well, generally, if it's over a given amount, you have to report it. You have to report that you went to conference agency and how much was valued that. If somebody asked you to come and speak at conference agency and, that was, there was some value to it, whether it's travel, hotel, etc. There's a value to it, actually, submit that for your,
And for these professional conferences, etc., in most instances, would it be that the entire General Assembly would invite or just select it with one party versus the other party or something like that?
Generally-
Leadership or something like that, but say we want that just across the board.
generally, those national organizations will invite everyone. They, in the law, with respect to, being open and available to everyone. So whether you go or not, that's all the individual legislator, but generally invite.
Okay.
If I may speak, I'm pretty sure there's a provision that says if you invite everybody, both parties at the general center, or one half of the general center, that's not important.
So
But that is not a reportable report.
I believe the allegation is that Representative Whitman did activate his Alec Care account. Is that true?
I don't represent him. I have no idea what our. I assume the representative would file a response.
That's a fine presumption.
All right, I know that you are only representing the particular legislature. Is there anyone else here representing Alec or anyone else related to this matter? Seeing, does the commission have any question for Mr. Richter or regarding this matter?
I do. I have a question why the recommendation instead of like creating a motion to dismiss was it ran to decide there was no violation.
My general preference in moving forward on these matters is to deal with the actual complaint itself. There was an assertion in there as related to, finding the matter frivolous, which, as before the commission, you can do that. I feel like I'm finding, I don't believe that that the commission should act on that. And I feel that, actually, what we're recommending that the commission move forward and dismiss the complaint, find no violation of the complaint as alleged, takes care of that issue, resolves it.
A question for you, Bill.
Mhm.
The allegation is the complaint asserts that the respondent organization, American Legislative Exchange Council, violated Ohio campaign finance laws by providing certain benefits to legislators. All right, stop. Are we saying that in and of itself could be a violation just by providing Alec Care? And then secondary to that, if such legislator uses it, would be another violation. I'm just wondering if they're one and the same, or are they separate issues?
I would identify them as being separate. And I think that, merely providing something without the, action of the person involved, I appreciate Ms. Ms. Turser for including me in her example of a campaign sign, but using that, if she says, if she provides those and produces them and distributes them all across the city, but had come to me and said, hey, I've got all these campaign signs for you. I said, well, thank you. I will use my own. It's yours. Those are separate and distinct. I don't want them. I don't need them. I'm not going to use them. That's not an in-kind contribution to me because I haven't accepted anything from them. Alternatively, if I say, yeah, that's good. I've got it. I'll distribute them. I'll put them around. You've got to have some kind of involvement in order to make something an in-kind contribution. Just merely offering something doesn't make it, at least in my opinion, doesn't make an in-kind contribution or a contribution for that matter. Anybody.
But your point is accepting the offer would.
By actually accepting it and then using it, yeah, that would. I mean, participating somehow like that would. In this case, I don't see that as being, okay, they took it, but they said they never used it. If you've never used it, you've never benefited from it, I don't see that as being something that's of value to that individual or to a campaign.
I would just disagree with something you said, unless I misheard you. I don't think they even took it. It was provided, and nobody ever used it, so I don't think there's an actual taking of it.
Good point.
Okay, any other comments here?
I move that we find no violation.
Second. All right, it's been moved and seconded.
Based on comments, you might want to do a roll call.
Mr. Richter, please call the roll.
I would gladly do so. Ms. Kaufman,
Yes.
Mr. Brown,
No.
Ms. Tavares,
Got
Ms. Cunningham,
Yes.
Mr. Norman,
Yes.
Mr. Beatty.
Yes.
That motion passes 4-2. Commission has found a violation.
I'm sorry. Mission was found.
No violation.
Oh, no violation.
Am I stuttering?
I'm not
I'm not trying to stumble.
with that.
I'm not trying to stumble over my words. No. That's okay. I can mumble at times, quickly, so.
Okay, before we proceed to the next case, I would call for a quick 10-minute recess.
All right. Gets us back here about 10 to.
Yeah.
Got it. Got it. That might be true. Right. I mean, right from the store. And what I'm trying to. Reset state. Right. Right, but I just, like I said. Now, it's going to last. That's really developing your now.
I always think it's better to set the expectations.
sure as a. I mean, you can go to the sleeves, so when you rinse them, you know, like, my mixer up, my kitchen sleeve upstairs to the second floor.
Yeah.
And that should be. I have to wait to make sure my post up is set up. I don't know.
This is. Yeah. I'm going to there, and that is why.
I'm still on. Yes.
The restroom will hit the chance, huh?
Hey, you're the one that's decided to be a tough guy.
I did park in a garage as opposed to a meter today. It's the thing.
Wisely.
Well, I thought maybe we could break it down. I said, no, I'm just not taking my chances. $6 versus 35 or 50 or whatever it is. Yeah,
You're talking about ticket, right?
Yeah. It's actually 35 or 50 or whatever. I said, I'll take a chance. I'll take $6 a day after. It's a tank board.
Yeah, and we order
Mike. It's still.
Half of the way.
Not availability in November, December, October is shot.
You're kind of a mixed bag.
It's funny, we tried to schedule mediation, so like October, I'm like, nope.
Yes, sir.
I just want to do it on a Sunday night. I'm glad Mike didn't have to sit on the hallway.
It's ridiculous. Good
You are moving. That's fine. Yeah, that's fine. Okay. Reasonable. Okay. Right. That sounds fun. Yeah. Right, okay. That makes sense. Plan on short. Yeah, I mean, we've gone through this so many times, I think we know generally the issues, so I mean, you know, have an open statement. 5 minutes each, yes. And, you know, however, whatever manner he wishes to do so. Okay, there you go. Yeah.
It's. Yes. The bottoms, one right there.
Oh, sweet.
It should also, I guess they just put it on lines.
Okay.
Ready?
Are we all ready to go? Okay. Yeah, let's get rid of this guy. Make it even more permanent.
Next matter on the docket was first. And it's a preliminary matter to give the party for Lewis Biden. First matter I'd like to speak about is that though we will not be limiting the presentations per se from the parties, today's hearing will cease at 3 o'clock. If things are going to go beyond that, we're going to set an additional date for. The second thing is for and this is for the commissioners as well, to keep the hearing moving. We are going to Commissioner Mormon will be going on all objections that are brought up during the hearing and the presentation of the evidence. If commissioner, once he rules on an objection, commissioners will seek that there will be further discussion, and we'll address the discussion at that time. But for the sake of order and keeping things moving, we're going to designate independent commissioner Norman to rule on objection. Any questions from the parties at the time before we started? Okay, we're going to proceed with opening statements. Since we've heard this case a great deal, we'd like you to limit those to 5 to 7 minutes for opening. And we will start with the complaint.
Mr. Hicks, before we proceed, generally in a trial proceeding, we have a separation of witnesses.
Oh, yeah.
Obviously, I just wanted to get up there and first say is that like to request that this was separation of witnesses.
Okay.
Susan Jones is a witness. She's not a party, but she's also will sit here as a representative of the campaign committee. The two parties of the campaign committee and this meeting.
If there are any witnesses who are not a party to this, we would ask that you step out in the hallway until you're called to testify in this matter.
Chris will pull out the individual.
Either he can or I will, yeah.
Are we ready to proceed?
Thank you, Commissioners. Thank you, Commissioner Beatty. I'm going to try to keep things throughout the day very net and focused and fact as best as I can. I think what you're going to hear today is me trying to prove a case and actually blowing away proving a case. What I think I'm going to prove is that Alvin Freeman filmed TV commercials and personally participated in the creation of radio spots. He was directly involved in their review and approval. He promoted them himself online. He engaged continually with JPL and associates and content personnel around his media program. One of those personnel even appeared in his ads, and I'll prove that. Freeman and his campaign treasurer personally received a bill from Jeff Longstreth of Constant Contact for $290,744.63 on April 1, 2020, which was months before anybody was even indicted in the Larry Hospital matters. Mr. Freeman filed a post-primary report on June 4th, 2020, and across the post-pre and post-primary showed expenses of only $14,107.42. By the way, that's the month before anybody was indicted. With minimal due diligence, I'll prove that he could have easily found the invoices in the SEC database and connected that to $138 of invoices, $38,000 invoices. I filed an affidavit with 6 invoices on September 15, 2020. I specifically noted constant contact in that filing. In that filing as well as JPL and Associates and whether KPL and Associates intertwined companies with the same leader. With minimal due diligence, he could have checked them out on my file and acted to clean up his reporting. But for almost a year, he's chosen not to. And I'll prove that. On December 11th, 2020, he signed an affidavit in which he claimed things such as, I also do not know whether or not the ads listed in the attachments to the complaint were actually for another candidate, or whether or not there was an in-kind contribution in particular, any particular amount, in a particular amount, that my campaign committee has never been notified of, or complainant has no personal knowledge that my campaign committed, had any debts, any loans, or any in-kind contributions, and neither do I. I'll prove that was not true by showing the constant stream of communications between constant content, JPL personnel, and Mr. Freeman and others that did with the campaigns around those media expenditures. And now for the better part of a year, that I would like to say that I think Mr. Freeman has literally passed by a dozen to 100 opportunities to clean up his reporting with information that he could have easily gotten and easily acted upon. I'll also prove that Luke Alford, the son of the speaker, was working for Freeman based on Freeman's own post on Facebook and on personally collected evidence. I'll prove what I think is an outrageous brazen pattern of non-reporting and flaunting the commission and by law. I allege 3 violations within my affidavits. I'll prove all 3 of them. ORC 351713B. Failure to file a complete and accurate statement. ORC 351710E2. Failure to keep a strict account of all contributions from whom received and the purpose for which they were dispersed. And ORC 359903B1. Acceptance of direct corporate contributions in the case of constant content, which is a corporation. But further, all proof that the committee also received violated ORC 3517-102C3, accepting contributions above the limits, especially in the case of JPL and Associates, which is an LLC. I'll also prove 2 other referable offenses. One is election falsification that relates to knowingly doing things. We'll talk about that at some point in this hearing. The second one is a pattern of corrupt activity. ORC 2923.32, which will be the Ohio statutory equivalent to racketeering. My evidence has only gotten stronger on these matters since my original filing, and I'm confident in my proving my case for finding a violation and a fine that is proportionate with the activity for the time. It has taken a long time for us to get here.
30 seconds.
I'm glad to be here, and I hope you will both listen with an open mind as I make my case and prove each of these points so that we can move forward with the violation of this matter. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, on behalf, the 2 respondents to this case are Alan Freeman and Alan Freeman's campaign. Student gentleman's not as long, should probably testify. This is a simple case that I think is getting convoluted by all these promises to prove things that we never disputed. We don't dispute, we have never disputed that there were advertisements that ran with our disclaimer on them, that we participated in some of the creative development of these ads, that there are, and worked with some folks from JPL, among others, to help make them happen. We knew that ads ran. We also knew that we did not know who paid for them, or what the final invoice was, or how to report it. The simplicity of this case is by quoting the statement that Mr. Hicks made in his deposition. And I quote, obviously, somebody cannot report what they do not know. And that, by the way, is an accurate statement of the law. Now, what do you have to know to report a campaign contribution? Because it's supposed to be made through, you can't make a contribution expenditure except through the treasurer, according to the revised to the 3517-01. And the 3517-10B says, what do you have to report? In other words, what do you have to be told about? You have to know what it is. Is this an in-kind from someone? Is it an in-kind contribution to someone? Is it an invoice? The vendor that you owe, is it somebody that spent money without authorization? A disputed debt is not actually a contribution or expenditure. You have to know what it is. Secondly, you have to know when it was made. What was the month, date, and year that the contribution or expenditure or whatever it is was made. Thirdly, you have to know who made it. You know, who paid Constant Contact? Mr. Hicks didn't know his deposition. We don't know either. If there's somebody that spent money on behalf of the campaign, with or without the campaign's authorization, and some of it was clearly without it, it was spent. You gotta know who that is, and they have to tell it. You can't just have a vendor going out there saying, well, we spent money, you never heard of us, but by the way, we want to get paid. You have to know why you were paid, the description of the services. Was it a radio ad? Was it a TV ad? Was it a mailing? What was it that the contribution or the expenditure is? And you have to know how much it is. You have to put down a number. And if you don't have that information, you can't report what you don't know. It's Mr. Hicks, right? Now, I think that it's clear that this stuff should have been reported. Should have been reported by Mr. Freeman's campaign committee. It should have been reported by whoever paid for it or whoever incurred a debt. They had a duty under Ohio law to report that to the campaign committee so it can be properly filed. And if there was an in-kind contribution made by somebody, they had a duty to report that. It's not just the campaign committee that has to. And by the way, this commission already has a case alleged by the Secretary of State in a referral against Larry Householder and JPL and Jeff Longstreet about it, saying, we think these people spent money without properly reporting it to the folks that benefit from it. And that would include us. So what happened? In 2019, Mr. Freeman decided to run for state rep. He met with JPL, and he never heard of Constant Contact. And if you take a look at exhibits J and K, all those references were JPL, apart from JPL. We all know today Constant Contact was owned by Jeff Longstreet. He didn't know that. He had no contract agreement with Constant Contact. And ultimately, he authorized Susan Jones to be his treasurer so that all contributions and expenditures were supposed to be made through her. He also gave her authority to let JPL know in real time how much money was in his campaign. Well, there are a number of reasons for that. Fundraising is obvious, but another reason is if you are authorizing JPL to do anything on your campaign, they have no authority to incur debt that you can't pay. He never authorized anybody to do that, whether it's JPL or Constant Contact. Now, what was Mr. Freeman doing prior to the crime? He was running primary elections, contested primary election. And on April 1, Mr. Hicks mischaracterized this exhibit W in book, which, by the way,
30 seconds.
The exhibit W was an email invoice saying, please, Constant Contact, not from Jeff Longstreet, but Constant Contact, please, telling Susan Jones, and he copied on that, but he doesn't remember receiving it. Pay us $290,000. Now, she had some pushback about it. Nobody ever authorized this kind of money. And ultimately, the contact at JPL said, don't worry about not proper campaign expenditure. You don't have to pay. So at the end of the day, he promised to prove that we knew of the details of campaign expenditures or contributions or whatever they are, and that we intentionally concealed them. He cannot prove that. His own name didn't even offer to prove that. You can prove we were in the ads that we know about that doesn't say the amount, when, where, why, what, there. And that, my friends, is what they needed to tell us. And they had a duty to do it, whoever they was. And we had no duty to report what we didn't know. By the way, Phil Richter agreed with me about that. The Secretary of State agreed with me about that.
Thank you,
And
Mr.
now I
President.
ask the commission to have that clarified.
Your case.
I would like to first call Alan Freeman, the specific intent of cross-examining him on his sworn affidavit.
We check, this is already been ruled upon. He doesn't have to testify until he wants to. He may testify as part of the case.
I would argue that it's not the rule upon, but you have said that filing an affidavit in a preliminary hearing did not mean that you couldn't in a future hearing, take the fifth. I believe that I could due process right on my side to be able to cross-examine him on his sworn affidavit that he submitted in the preliminary phase of this case. That has not been ruled upon.
I believe it's been ruled upon if he calls himself to testify in this case, I think he opens the door, but I think at this stage, he is entitled to not testify, Mr. Hicks.
I object that I'm unable to examine somebody on their own sworn testimony. It is a testify and run sort of scenario, and I think it's violating my due process rights.
The record is so duly noted.
Comments from commission. Discussion.
If the reason to not testify is taking a bit, that should at least be entitled to call a witness, not with this point, that's what they're gonna do. But that's just my opinion.
That's your opinion. We can have him do that. Typically, what I have done in civil matters is counsel interpose that on behalf of their client, but if we want Mr. Freeman to raise his hand and swear and say, I'm not taking the fifth, the problem I have with that is, at least based on what Mr. Bry said, he may call him his case in chief, which would open the door to any cross-examination.
Yeah, I think somebody has to go on record and say that he's gonna take it down. That's just.
Mr. Bry?
I will go on the record and say that he's exercises of rights under Article 1, Section 10 of the Ohio Constitution, not to testify. He's not taking. They didn't need to put him. But the very reason he wants us to use those words is the very reason we don't.
I still believe that I have the right to examine him on his statement, and I think you guys should consider the ugly precedent it will be if people can file affidavits into the election commission and then are not subject to any cross-examination on their own sworn statement. He could have had a sworn statement that said he took the fifth when he filed this.
I think that's already been ruled on by the commission. Mr. Hicks, I would say at this stage, move on to your next witness, please.
Are there any other commissioner comments?
I'm sorry?
I asked if there were any other commissioner comments.
I asked that as well, and there are. No other.
And I call Megan Fitzmark.
I got it.
Is this supposed to be the witness here?
Yes.
And if he could bear so that they can see the screen, but it's not, be able to play video evidence.
Sure. Sure.
Plus then I can sit down. We need to rotate it here so they can see that I can't read.
You're gonna have it. We will. You turn the chair so that you look at the screen.
Oh, that's fine. I already did.
That's why I said we turned the chair.
That's fine.
For purposes of our hearing today, I don't care. I don't know if any commissioners care if Mr. Hicks goes to the podium to go to the chair. It's probably easier for the chair to keep documents, but if anybody has an objection, please speak up.
All right, thank you, Ms. Fitzmartin.
Before we proceed, can we swear in the witness, please?
You need to swear me in, by the way, don't you?
Yeah, we should have, you're right.
Yeah, that should have been sworn in.
Do this. You swear and affirm that the testimony you give today.
Thank you for appearing today, Ms. Fitzmartin. Can you briefly describe for me what was your role in Alan Freeman's campaign for House District 66 in the primary in 2020?
As a contractor for JPL and Associates and
I'm going to apologize. I'm partially deaf and having a little hard time hearing. So can you speak up so I can hear you as well? Thank you.
As a 1099 contractor for JPL and Associates and Constant Content, I provided critical consulting and media for
Okay, and what was the your personal relationship with Alan Freeman in terms of this campaign? How much did you communicate with him? How much did you talk with him?
and communicating quite a bit and I try to quantify that.
Okay, so quite a bit of quantifying in some way at least. Can you describe for me who you were? You said you worked with JPL and Associates. Can you describe for me how exactly you were compensated and what you believe to be the structure of Constant Content in JPL?
JPL and Associates was a global consulting firm that I was a vendor with before. Constant Content was a media and content, as the name suggests, company that I was also a vendor for.
So you worked for both organizations?
Yes, I filed the tenant for both organizations.
For both, so you were 1099 for both organizations, you were not a regular employee of either organization. Okay. So beyond that, from the management structure of JPL and Constantine, could you describe how they were managed, or were they separate management systems, the same management system? Did you work for both?
Yeah, the function is like point of contact with the.
For both Constantine and JPL and Associates? Do you still work for JPL and Associates or Constantine? If not, where do you work now?
I do not work for either. I terminated my association with both entities on the last year. And I currently have as I always have, I continue to have my own consulting entity and also taking care of like CCD.
Okay, so if I need a house, I can contact you in this area, or wherever you live, okay? Were you present when Alan Freeman's TV commercials were filmed? And where were they filmed?
In San County.
Okay, who else was present? Was Dean Smith present, for example?
Yes, each was present. Brandon McKean's present. Another candidate. Our secret Caroline. And then we have the governor and a couple other individuals that have associated with it.
I have a request. Can you turn your chair and face all the commissioners so that we can see?
Sorry.
Because and I appreciate there's going to be some things on the screen, but
Okay,
I want to make sure everybody is seeing you and hearing what you have to say. Thank you. My apologies.
okay, I'm gonna play, right after that, so I understand, but right after this, I'm gonna play something on the screen.
We can move the screen.
I want to be careful on not messing something up. on
Okay.
Connections.
So, Mr. Dixon, if you'd like to move over here with the podium and
Okay.
address your questions that way,
Well, we have this-
either way, that's your choice.
It's difficult.
It's a weird.
Would it be possible, like, move, if we really need not use the podium, move her back, then we can still sit here and everybody can see everything?
That's fine by me.
Yeah.
I don't use, you sit up there when you want your question.
Just.
Yeah.
We
Pull
just
it back.
move this along.
If
Okay.
you get mobile, we can move.
Actually, I think it's open, I think.
Here, so that you.
Oh, yeah, we can go wherever, it's just heavy, I don't want to get out. Or just complain.
Put it back here, so if you're crossing. I think you're on with, you got to move right there. Facing the witness.
I think you can hear, I'll help you hold it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Now, we move further here. then everybody's there. Okay. I'm gonna play a commercial here. That was in my file, exhibit 22A, but it was electronic item. If I do this right, if I feel right.
A small business owner has called conservative, abandonment. Alan Freeman will bring these same conservative values to the Ohio House, building business in a better Ohio for all our families. Alan Freeman for state representative.
Okay, so is that an ad that you were there on the film?
Yeah.
Were you at, I think it might have been a couple locations, were you at all the locations? that you were at? And then at the beginning of this, there was a person sitting at the table, is that you?
Okay.
Okay, so I asked him, I kind of jumped to the commercial, who all was present? Was there anybody else that was present? You mentioned Brian Lambton and Gene Schmidt and some other candidate people that were present, but who else was present? Like, was Jeff Longstreth present?
No, he's fine.
Was Stephen Caraway present?
Yes, that is part of the. I can't.
That's okay, I'm not trying to be, I'm not asking you to have perfect memory, who, but everybody that was there. You can't remember who fell away. So what was your role beyond Alan Freeman? What was your role? Oh, hold on, I want to play another commercial just to get these out of the way. And this is a longer commercial.
1-2B or whatever.
22B, I'm sorry, yes. Thank you.
Conservative groups like Buckeye Firearms Association, Ohio Rights Alike, and Ohio Valley Voters reject Owens. Like state conservative Nick Owens hiding Brooks, true conservative Alan Freeman has always represented us. That's why Freeman is the only candidate endorsed by Ohio Rights Alike, Ohio Valley Voters, and Freeman earned the highest possible rating from Buckeye Firearms Association. True conservative Alan Freeman for state representative.
Now, just for the record, could you just read for me what the disclaimer says at the bottom of that commercial?
We can go right to the
Okay. With this commercial, I know the Nick Owens stuff is different, but the parts that were Alan Freeman filmed at the same time as the other commercial. There was no second film or anything like that. Okay, so, at the time, would you say,
Just to clarify the date, that can be the picture.
oh, I thought there were- okay, I meant the video, I wasn't meaning that, so, okay. At the time, when you were present, were you representing or being paid for by JPL, by content, or is that kind of just mixed up?
Well, given the fact that this was a media, and also political, we discussed campaign issues, I would say both.
So you received a 1099 from both JPL and Associates and Constant Contact? How did you keep track of which one would go where?
That was my responsibility.
Did you get paid an hourly rate or just a fixed rate?
First of
A
all,
fixed rate.
we need to let her finish answering the question, and we need to let her. You can't talk over each other before we can't take it on. We're not getting complete.
I follow that.
We would let each other finish.
I was given a flat rate from. Yeah.
Beyond Alan Freeman, what was your role with Larry Householder or Team Householder candidates?
I was associated with the team as an individual that would be a part of candidates and members, campaigns. So I helped with political advising and the media, paid media, and earned media. Side of it as well.
What was your relationship with Jeff Longstreth?
He was the individual that I, had each entity, JPL Associates and Constant Content that I was contracted with.
How often did you interact with Jeff Longstreth?
Almost every day.
Did Jeff Longstreth direct you that certain things should be Constant Content, certain things should be JPL?
So as both entities were described to me, JPL Associates was the political consulting entity, Constant Content was the media, content, entity for the.
On Alan Freeman's commercials, did you play any role in the booking or working with strategic media placement on the placement of those?
I certainly communicated that commercial, that advised when taking place. However, I did not direct or have any interface with the placement.
Okay. What about the production? Did you make arrangements for example, the video shoot, but who made the arrangements for that?
That would be part of my role.
Your role, okay.
As I did for a number of members.
What was your role with Growth and Opportunity Path for Generation Now?
I never communicated with either expenditure, especially with regards to the campaign committees.
You had no role with them or you had some role with them?
I had a role with Growth and Opportunity Path, and I briefly had a role with Generation Now during an issue campaign, but not during the selection cycle.
So I want to play another commercial. Get your break, please.
What is it, Assistant Director?
23. Oh, I don't, that's that's not, we don't want any buffer visual, but the, so I don't, that last video clip, I don't recognize that from the other video clips. When the last video, maybe it was, but I don't remember the standing in front of the house one in the other commercial. Were you present when that clip was filmed?
If it was taken on the day that computer, filming, she said yes, but I don't recall that exact.
Yeah, so that's, I think that's a fun one. That one. Now, these clips, that's the same person in the same location in another area. Were you present when these were filmed?
No, it's not.
So everybody's wearing the same clothes. They're in the same place. But you're saying that this was filmed when you weren't present?
Objection, he's asking an assuming question, not yet justified.
I could play the other commercial so we can see the footage. I could play it again. It would help you to recollect your memory of when these were filmed.
You overrule my objection.
She has to answer that one.
Right. So again, I don't recall this meeting when I was present.
So I'm gonna go back and play. I apologize. I'm not doing it. I'm gonna go back and play. Hopefully the short one here, but then there's a 22. I think that guy's in there.
A small business owner, a strong conservative, abandonment. Alan Frink will bring these same conservative values to the Ohio House, building business in a better Ohio for all our families. Alan Frink, for state representative.
So it's entirely possible.
Wait, I need to make sure I didn't hear the question that was posed. I apologize.
I just said same size, same clothes, and then I'm putting her. So are you saying you weren't present when the video footage was filmed for the Growth and Opportunity commercial, but you were present when it was filmed for his own commercial?
I would object, if it's formally a question, you can ask it directly rather than saying, are you saying? Overall, I think she knows. Okay.
And what I think I'm trying to understand, there are multiple days where content could have been filmed or shot. But not everything was not necessarily done on one specific day.
Okay, so you're maintaining that you were not present when it was filmed for Growth and Opportunity?
I'm maintaining that when the specific scene that you asked if I was present during, I do not recall being present for that one.
That was exhibit 23, I believe.
Yeah, that was the Growth and Opportunity kind of commercial. And I don't want to go faster, but just because I want to be clear, let's play that one again, 23. I think there might be some other footage in there. I just want to confirm from you which ones you claim you were not present at. So we're going to stop it here. I need to aid you guys. So here's another one, which is in a restaurant setting. You happen to know what, in his commercial, because there's somewhere I can go back to, if you happen to know what restaurant that was?
Yes, I usually rely on local individuals. I don't remember the name. I was certainly present at that restaurant, but I don't remember the name. It's somewhere in Vermont County.
Okay, so
I've been to a lot of restaurants around the state.
and I want to keep moving here as fast as I can, but I just want to establish, so this setting, you can see the people in the background and who was there. The other setting, we had the two people were in the same clothes in the same location. And I want to go back to, I might. I'm going to go back to, let's get it to the short one, which is 22A. I'm trying
A
to.
small business owner, a strong
Okay, so
conservative.
So let's go back, this is 22A. So this is, actually, I've looked at this pretty closely, it's actually a different shoot, the footage is different for the way the camera moves, but this is the same setting as film commercial. Were you present when this was filmed?
Yes.
So that the growth and opportunity one where you present when that was done.
So what I think we were trying to ascertain is if I was present during the growth and opportunity film shoot, and that is not the case. Because what happened is that these clips are publicly available, so every entity is allowed to use them.
Okay, I'm gonna move on from this, but I just want to explore just a second here because they're actually different clips. It's not, so we can go play them screen by screen, but it's not that somebody lifted the clip out of one and put it in the other. They're actually different clips. It's not a slightly different angle.
During film shoots, you typically have multiple cameras, so you can get multiple angles.
But where was the footage that wasn't used in its campaign ads publicly available that you're aware of?
That was their responsibility.
Well, you made the representation that it was publicly available, so I just thought you could support why you made that representation.
Certainly, YouTube, I don't know what happened.
Okay. I'm gonna move on. How did you get approval for Alan Freeman Media? How did you get approval? I don't know, but how did you get approval? Did you get approval from Alan Freeman? Did you get approval from Joe Longstreth? Prosecutor Caraway?
Alan would have the spots before they went live,
And what do you mean by going live?
going to the placement agency.
And who got his approval? You or somebody else?
I don't
Okay, so that helped a lot because there were text messages of approval and so forth in the exhibit. So was that the typical way that approvals were done, or you talk with them, or?
To get us the approvals from candidates, like, communicated in a variety of ways. Text, email, phone conversation, in-person conversation, just depends on the day.
So with Alan Freeman, was there a predominant method by which you got approval? Or a common way that you did it, or all those ways?
I can't listen to, there's one way is more than another, but I'd say the staff is an complete everyone.
I want to make sure I heard you correctly. You say, I got approval from Mr. Freeman before this went live.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. And just for clarification, I provided I think 15-minute clip and a 30-minute clip. 7 minutes. That'd be wild.
We'd be here all day.
That would cause people to never vote again. So, those two, were there other spots? Those are the two that I ever got access to directly. Were there other spots other than those that you got approval from Alan Freeman, or those two distinct spots?
Not to my knowledge, but
Any other than those two?
correct, sorry.
Okay, so I went to, have you look at something that is exhibit 12 in my set? And I have a copy of it for her. So I don't have copies for you, but I have a copy. And if we need to see it better, I can also pull it up on the screen. But those are, and I'll tell you what it is. And then I'll ask you a couple questions about it, or what I think it is. So in his discovery, Stephen Fairway provided emails that had links to Dropbox. And that's where I got one of the commercials from. And on that links in Dropbox, your name is on the, had an account. And it says, and I just want you to confirm that I'm not misrepresenting anything, that your Dropbox account was Megan Fitzmartin with Constant Contact.
No, it's not. So my Dropbox account, is covered. I have a personal Dropbox account for quite some time, and I have access to the Constant Content. Dropbox, as did a variety of vendors.
Yes, and she has what we have in front of us. Is that what she has?
See that?
They just,
I gave her. So I just want to, because of this, because it's not very visible on what I printed out because it's small. We could go on the web and look at it. But, I can blow it up here on the screen from the file. Are you making it work? Does it say content?
Yes?
That's right, yes.
Thank you.
So you want to reflect on whether your content credentials listed you as, your Dropbox credentials listed you as content.
I have my own Dropbox and then constant content off of Dropbox, in which I had access to those files.
So when you were using this account, you were acting as a content employee at that point in time?
I'm not an employee.
1099.
Yes, the files were stored in constant content Dropbox.
And did these Dropbox links were in the emails that I obtained, it would appear that these were being used to get approvals from Allen Freeman. And so, because if you reflect on, was this the method by which you shared commercials with him for his approval, which is where I got on the commercial from?
Objection. I don't think there was a question. I've been asking you the question.
Oh, well, let me answer it.
It's so, due to the large file sizes of a number of things that I seek, a number of content pieces that I would get approval for, I would either send links to candidates, or some of them that unfortunately didn't have a lot of internet access. I would then have to download and share, so I would share it in both forms. I don't recall every single time I sought approval that I was dealing with that.
But so you don't recall whether that was the way that you?
That's the only way. I just don't want to, there's a, yes, certainly anyway.
Is that the way that you shared with other candidates as well?
As I just stated, it varied, depending on, what the comfort level was with, their savviness. And so with either link or I download the file and share, but obviously that took a while because sometimes files can be large.
When you got Mr. Freeman's approval, what happened next?
I would communicate with our media vendor that the files should be.
Who was that vendor?
Sure.
And who would you communicate with specifically?
And I have stuff right there.
Okay. So I want to be clear on what you represent. You said you didn't have anything to do with the media placement, but you were the one that communicated with vendor. Didn't you ran the media?
That did the placement. So placement to me, and just to clarify, means talking to the media stations and actually saying, oh, I'm being placed at a spot between 6 a.m. and 7 a.m. during the news. And that was never my role, and never anything that I've done or offered. That's why I think placement is that way. So
Thank you. Did you see the placements? Did you see the, when they developed the placement plans, stuff? Did you see those?
At times, yes. Sometimes candidates and members wanted to see, hey, what is my commercial being played? So we request those slots, but that wasn't always the case.
Who communicated that? I'm going to call them SMP, strategic media placement. This would be here. Who communicated with them the amount of spend that should take place? So you never were aware of any of what the amount?
I never communicate directly with SMP.
I thought you said just before that you communicated with them once Al gave its approval.
I'm trying to distinguish. I communicate with strategy group media, and I never. So if you're referring to them as two separate entities, I want to continue that as
Okay.
well.
So given that you brought that up, can you explain to me what your belief is, what the difference is between the SBM, I guess, strategy group media, and SMP?
Strategy group, the place, whatever it's called, but SMP is the placement entity under strategy group media.
Okay. So one is, in your view, one is a subordinate to the other.
Well, I don't know the answer to that. So I guess I should not use what associated with, affiliated with.
Okay, I want to give you something else, take it out of the back. This is from Mr. Bray's exhibits, or exhibit W, from Mr. Bray's exhibits.
Right.
Right, sorry. So, have you seen that document before?
I'm sorry, what exhibit is that?
W.
Sorry, I apologize. I probably missed that.
I have not seen this document before.
Okay, so, okay, so you've never seen that document before.
This is the first time I've seen this document.
Okay. Did you ever discuss with Alan Freeman his media cost?
I'm sure during budget discussions and talked probably about the cost of the campaign.
Can you be more specific than that? You said we talked broadly about the cost of the campaign. Did you speak specifically with him about cost of media in that campaign?
Not that I recall in terms of specific costs, other than, helping connected with fundraisers so that we can raise money to them.
I'm sorry, I missed the tail end of that.
Other than, knowing that campaigns cost money, connecting with, individuals who can assist with fundraising and to assist them.
Did you communicate with anybody else about media costs associated with Alan Freeman's campaign?
Certainly you guys launched that new. And we could ascertain budgeting from strategy group.
When you generally talk about the overall campaign cost for Mr. Freeman, can you remember any specific, is it order of magnitude, how much money you talked about being involved with the campaign?
That would primarily be Jeff Longstreth's role.
Well, but you said that you had general discussions with them.
I was a part of discussions. I don't want to say it wasn't, in the room, but Jeff Longstreth was, when we talk about how much money would be spent on campaigns.
But I guess I'm confused. If you said you had general conversations with Alan Freeman about the cost of the campaign, and now I'm not sure what you're saying. Can you just elaborate on what conversations did you have with or without other people involved in the conversation specific to the cost of Alan Freeman's campaign that you already represented, you had talked with such conversation?
Insofar as campaigns cost money, talk about, how to raise money, into these campaigns. So, do we acknowledge that TV costs money? Yes. So let's help raise the money that it costs.
So how much money we're trying to raise?
The common phrase was the limit does not exist.
A limit does not exist.
In terms of how we raise money, so that we certainly have goals, but let's try and raise what you can.
So I haven't been personally involved with many campaigns in a deep way, but there might be like, we plan to have $100,000 media campaign and we have to raise the money for it. Versus you have a specific goal. I've always seen there be a goal that, I need this much, and if I don't get to this much. So you're saying that you had these discussions and there was, how do you describe it, no limit or whatever?
It's the, let's raise as much as you can so that you can, spend. What would you do when? Yes, there's a goal. There's a goal to cover their mail costs and their media costs, but let's, you go down that goal.
So was there any ever a specific goal of how much money you were trying to raise for Alan Freeman's campaign?
I did not raise money into this campaign. However, there, I don't recall there being no specific goal.
I'm just going to move on. SMT claimed in an affidavit that I can share with you if you'd like to get a copy of it, that content paid bill for Alan Freeman. You represented that you were a 1099 consultant with Constant Content. It was the media side of JPL, which is what you also represented. Were you aware of those payments?
Payment and billing wasn't a part of my role.
So you were not aware?
I mean that when a bill paid from strategic. Strategic director that it is supposed to go to content as the media activity, but in terms of the pay and billing, I was not part of. So you're not humble in my career.
So you mentioned when bills came from strategy where they had to get to billing or whatever. Can you say that again? You said something to the effect of, or we have to, the reporter read it back, but you said something about when the bill came, they had to get the so-and-so. Can you say that again, what you said?
When a bill, came in, it would go through from strategy to go to constant.
Okay, and how do you know that if you weren't involved in?
That's the question, again, from a media perspective. The previous, the strategy group was a media partner with constant content, so that's why it's media and media.
Did you see those bills ever? Ever?
Occasionally.
So I'm gonna. So this is. This is in my pack, Mr. Ray, that is also the people number 13. So it's invoices from strategy and media. So some of them were for, some of them are for Humphrey specifically, some of them are for multiple candidates on one bill. Did you see any or all of these?
I've certainly seen some of these.
Can you identify which one you believe you, any of these you believe you did not see?
I'm sorry, I think there are a lot of them.
But I think there's 6, or, I mean, there's more than that in here. Okay, so what was your role? Why did you see them? If you were involved in that?
Occasionally, individuals would confuse my role and like handle with other people associated with the organization.
Okay, so I just want to kind of wrap up and hit on a couple of things just so just to confirm some of your answers. So I'm not asking to repeat them, but you were when you did the media shoots, you saw some of the invoices. You were a dual 1099 of Constant Content and JPL. You were working on fundraising for a media program.
I was not working on fundraising though.
You had discussions
I
about
never
fundraising. You had discussions about the
I would
budget.
connect candidates and members with individuals who that's far and away their expertise, not mine.
Okay, other than that correction, that thank you from that remark, is there anything else that I represented that's not consistent with what your answers were?
I don't believe so.
Did you have any, just a couple of wrap-up questions? Did you have any conversations with Stephen Caraway about any of these strategy and media invoices that you said you saw, at least some of them?
I don't believe so, other than making sure funders also be.
How about Anna Lippincott?
Sorry.
How about Anna Lippincott or Lippincott?
Anna was the individual that think there was me, so the other primary individual that I would send, if I someone received invoices or anything, I would send them their way.
What do you mean by accidentally received?
So as I stated, sometimes like individuals confuse Anna and I, for in our roles, so we just have to usually send each other what was really in our kind of wheelhouse, so the political stuff going to me, and then billing and operating stuff.
Okay, so I think that I want to clean something up here to make sure I'm clear on this. What was your relationship with Scott Schweitzer during the period of JV, of SMB, what strategic strategy and media with it?
So as a strategy group was a vendor that was used frequently, so communicated with them as anyone would as a vendor on the campaign.
Okay. One thing I left out too, just to confirm, is you said Alan Freeman approved the ads. And that's when you took them to strategy group for them to get placed. Okay. All right. I think that's all my questions for you. Oh, thank you.
I have a few. Is it more comfortable for me to ask them here? I can
I defer to you.
Mr. Ryan, for our purposes, it's probably easier if you're at the podium, only because then the witness looking forward to us as opposed to you.
Okay.
I apologize.
No, I am, notwithstanding your appearance, I'm more flexible.
Thank you.
Was Alan Freeman's campaign the only campaign you were involved with? Was it the only campaign where JPL or Constant Content was involved? And approximately, were you working for just a couple of numerous or health campaigns?
Well, I was working for every Republican caucus member, as well as, so in day-to-day work, and then there were 10 to 12 minors, I can't remember the exact number, believe it or not, I knew at the time, but 10 minors that were contested.
And after, well, you knew, of course, that Alan Freeman was unsuccessful in his primary race in the 2020.
Sorry, yes. Apologies.
After he lost his primary, in terms of the races he'd been represented, where would you focus?
On to the general election. Especially given the fact that the 2020 primary is extended, it's probably a lot of folks know that it's a very quick turnaround to get things focused on the general.
Do you know that Alan Freeman's campaign was providing information in real time to JPL about how much money was in his campaign?
We certainly knew that, cash on hands were reported for a number of candidates, especially as primaries.
I think I heard you say you were not involved with JPL financing.
Correct.
And were you also not involved with Constant Content finance?
That is correct.
And were you involved in giving or doing financial notices? The notices of any kinds from JPL or Constant Content?
No, that was not my role.
You testified a couple times that Mr. Freeman approved the content of various things.
That's correct.
In your communications with him about approval, did you ever agree to any amount that could be spent on those things?
I do.
And in your communications with him, did you ever tell him, this is how much will be spent on these particular things? When the ads were ran through strategic media or the web, sometimes the bills will come.
Right.
But if it's because people confuse your role with that accountability.
Yes.
And again, looking at I take it as the person who is responsible for looking at those bills and deciding what to do.
Her umbrella is much more operations focused.
You know, if you're looking at as an employee or a 1099 contract.
She's a 1099.
You know how the expenses for Alan Freeman's campaign media were handled. You know whether or not there was a plan in place with Alan Richard or Jeff Longstreth or somebody else at JPL or their Constant Content to deal with these expenses.
I do not.
Are you aware of any invoice that was sent from JPL to the Alan Freeman?
I am not.
Are you aware, or have you seen any invoices from Constant Contact to Allen Freeman Bank? Are you aware of any notices of any kind of expenditures that were sent to the Allen Freeman Bank?
No.
Would you agree you can't report what you're doing?
That is correct.
Mr. Hicks, any redirect?
I do have to be redirect. So you said you work with, based on this question, you said you work with members of the Republican caucus. Was Alan Freeman a member of the Republican caucus? Do you know?
He is not, which is why I explained that it both members of the Republican caucus and contested primaries.
Okay, so what was the criteria by which then you work with the contested primary?
As the Speaker of the House, Larry House was already worked with an individual in the contested primary, and I would work with that people.
So it was not based on whether the Ohio Republican Party endorsed that candidate. If they did not in the Allen Freeman case.
Correct.
Okay. He asked you a lot of questions about invoices.
Objection, is he asking for, he asked me a question, did the Ohio Republican Party endorse?
No, I added one question.
Well, then he testified about the other, I think that's the problem.
Why don't you clarify, Mr. Hicks?
So what my question was that, that to your knowledge, that you work with candidates based on Larry House order endorsing them, not based on the Ohio Republican Party that endorsed them.
That's correct. As
And I added, kind of a great confusion because I added the parenthetical, if they did not in the case of Alan Freeman, the Ohio Republican Party did not endorse them. So I apologize for not being clear. You talked, now you said he asked you questions about whether you saw invoices that went to Alan Freeman. In the last year, more than that, since April 1 of 2020 to today, did anybody ask you for any records you had of invoices? I'm asking that question specifically, Megan, because you said you sometimes got these invoices for Alan Freeman Media. Did anybody from the campaign or otherwise ask you for copies of any invoices you had so that the campaign could determine what they should be reporting?
I don't think that.
So you said you talked to, in my testimony, that he asked you about the bill, you said you talked to Alan Freeman. I think you said like every day or pretty close to every day or very frequently. And I saw there's a lot of text messages and so on and so forth. So were you not accessible to Alan Freeman later, or he just never asked you, or was there some, a breakup into what I'm saying, or you would you have responded? Let me ask a clear question. Had you been asked, would you have provided those copies of the invoices you had received to Alan Freeman or his campaign?
I likely would have said, talk to Anna.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
I likely would have said, talk to Anna, because again, that wasn't I think everything that was sent to me accidentally, I forwarded it versus, that was a much more, complete picture of what's going on.
So so Anna's not here, so I can't, but had he asked you to specifically, well, can you specifically send me any of those that you have? Would you have sent them to him?
I would have said, talk to Anna.
So you would not have sent them to him?
Then again, she would have all the, she would have the database of every program. It's my understanding.
Okay, okay. Just on the bills again. How did this, on the bill, was there ever a bill for your time and effort?
No.
Okay, were you ever disclosed as far as you know on any candidates' campaign finance reports for your 1099 work with them for Wisconsin content? Did you ever, were you aware of any, did anybody ever ask you to provide information on how much you should be in kind or otherwise reported by these candidates?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay. I don't have anything further.
Any commissioners have any questions?
On exhibit 12, I think, provided that you could give a to it. I just have a question, just a clarification. Or, I'm sorry, I think it's 13.
Oh, sorry.
It's the series of invoices. Now, if I look at all of these invoices in Exhibit 13, they all say building constant content. They're all from strategic, apparently. But when you get in the back, they have paid stamped on it. Do you know the paid? You know?
I do not know.
Ma'am, I'm looking at unit exhibit 13. And if I look at all of the invoices, they reference under projects as Alan Freeman. I know there's one where there are additional candidates, but these all relate to production for, at least in part, to Alan Freeman, correct?
So I'm answering your question correctly, which invoices?
There are multiple invoices under exhibit 13. When I look at them, they all reference this project, Alan Freeman, 2020 Ohio House District 66. I'm assuming that's for his campaign, correct?
Correct.
And I know all but one of them appear to be exclusively for services for Mr. Freeman's campaign, correct?
I guess I should have answered the previous questions I'm inferring since I don't produce this document, so this is produced in my life.
What you get, Megan, the pay for Frankie says 245 at the bottom. The one that's the whole.
I'm simply trying to understand that I'm inferring that I'm agreement is based on this document. And that, you know, maybe he was in Cincinnati media market.
If we look at all of these invoices, it appears to be for Mr. Freeman's campaign, except for the one, and I guess it would be page 5, I believe, where there are a number of candidates listed. It was Stewart, Lampton, Freeman, Schmidt, and Young. All the others appear to be exclusively for Mr. Freeman, correct?
Yeah.
And would it be, do you have an understanding of whether Constant Content would have then forwarded these invoices to the Freeman campaign for them to have paid these?
That wasn't my role. So
You wouldn't have any knowledge whatsoever.
I would, that was, the role of another individual that worked for the organization.
Did you ever have any discussions with anybody at Constant Content or JDL about paying these invoices and how your companies were going to get paid for the services that were allegedly performed?
I forward these, and if I accidentally receive these invoices, I would forward them to the individual who did billing for Constant Content.
So you wouldn't have ever forwarded any of these to Mr. Freeman?
No. Constant Content.
Related question, okay, these are invoices were forwarded to the other individual. What was the, so for instance, many times we pass something on to a controller and they're another related person, there may be some type of check back just to make sure that this is a legitimate invoice. How would the other individual know that this was for, since you, in my understanding from the testimony, you were the individual that would pass this on to the ultimate legal company to replacement, correct? Would the other individual, excuse me for forgetting the name, check back with you, make sure that this was a legitimate invoice for services that were done for a period of time?
We would have this discussion, yes, this was a commercial that was placed on here. We communicated daily, we work out the same office. Or I guess not out of the same office, but we at the same office, multiple times a week.
Okay.
I'm looking at invoice dated March 9 of 2020, and the amount of the invoice is $95,000. You have that in front of you?
What you did.
I do too.
It's like might be the third page. Do you have that?
I didn't have the invoice number two.
I'm sorry.
It's got a unique invoice number.
Top right.
707.
For reference purposes, the blue numbers at the bottom might be an easier way to find out what page.
I don't have any numbers at the bottom of accident.
So just so the commissioners are aware, I gave them out a copy that has just a footnote number on there. for yours, it's
Mine does
invoice
not.
number
Otherwise, I would have
6707.
that on base stamp or something, but I don't have that.
Sorry.
So it's invoice
Right.
6707 dated March 9 of 2020. The amount of the invoice is $95,000. Do you see that?
I do.
Is that something that would be communicated to Mr. Freeman before that invoice would be approved or before the service would be approved to submit $95,000 worth of ad time?
Sometimes, and sometimes not.
So
So I don't recall this exact invoice, I mean, I don't recall this exact invoice being communicated, but it could have been.
But as it relates to Mr. Freeman, there were times when he had to approve invoices being submitted as opposed to other times you just don't know. Is that fair?
Oh, I'm just saying candidates broadly. I apologize, not
And I
necessarily.
don't care about other candidates. We're here about Mr. Freeman. As it relates to Mr. Freeman, before Constant Content is going to spend almost $100,000 on advertising time, is that something he would have needed to approve?
Not necessarily, no.
And if you have any specific recollection of Mr. Freeman approving content time or expenses before they were actually incurred?
No, not specifically.
Any other commissioners with any other questions?
I just have one. Going back to the invoice that was just referenced, 6707. There's not much specific in the invoice. Are these generally the way the, strategic media placement, produced invoices without much information about number of spots, amount per spot, so that the candidate will have as much information about what this money was going to.
Insofar as the ones that I have seen, this seems fairly common, but I would defer obviously to, strategy for how they invoiced.
Any other questions, Commissioner? Council, any other follow-up to this witness?
Just one. Megan, as you look through exhibit 13, do you have a specific recollection of ever having seen these invoices before?
I am sure that I've seen some, I'm not sure that I've seen all.
I have one quick follow-up. I'm still confused on this when you got the accidentally sent. So SM's strategy and media, how did that happen? Was it different people that would send them and some of the people sent them to you and some sent, or the same person was getting confused and sending them sometimes to you? Didn't know which person. Just expand on what you mean by you. Better understand what you mean by you got accidentally sent them.
There are several questions in there. I would ask they limit themselves to one.
Go ahead.
Certainly, I don't speak for other people and how they operate, but, you know, I would presume that find the individual that you're communicating with on approvals and kind of coordinating with the candidate on spots, and then you just, you know, that, so that communication is going back and forth. And there's also some, but there were, a number of, individuals from the group that we communicate with, so it's just kind of a.
So how, just to follow up that, and I'll be able to begin is, how many invoices do you think you were accidentally sent? Like, do you generally quantify it?
I can't answer that.
One or two? All right.
She just indicated she didn't know.
Okay.
So am I understanding this, do you say that because you're the one that set up the shoot, that they might have your name, so it says attention Megan?
Right.
Okay, that's what I'm.
Yeah, if we're communicating on other things, I mean, that's, if there happens in life, you just kind of go with that point of contact.
And what is, for a quick follow-up? The whole, what's confusing me too is the bills from, I believe the bills from Strategy Media, clarify, are for the airtime. Well, there's no, I think, withdraw my question because there's production things in there too, so I apologize.
Ma'am, thank you for your time today.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Mr. Hicks, you'd like to call your next witness?
Rob Secor.
Hold on, for the, commission, it's the hour at, 12 o'clock. Going to be in the today's session at 3. what is the commission for, what is the commission pleasure? Just keep going or some type of 30-minute lunch break or anything like that? Or
I think we're
we
going
leave
to,
it as
my,
three?
my preference would be, let's go until like 1 o'clock, take a short break for restroom and then come back and finish the day. I don't know how it is.
Anybody else?
That's fine with me.
I think these are the check with council, because I'm having practice with 2 diabetics, have a heightened awareness that everybody is not necessarily able to just go and learn. So,
I'm in the age where I need food less than I need, other groups.
So we're okay to proceed, take a short recess in the middle of this, just use the restroom and get back to it. Okay. Thank you.
Rachel wants to give it a leave, but yeah, Bill, Rachel.
Bill, we're doing okay? Okay. If you need something, holler.
Yes. Vending machines all.
No.
there isn't really such a thing.
Thank you.
I have a lunch bar and everything, that's like, yeah.
The lighting colors.
If you would be sworn, if you would be sworn by the court reporter, we'll be able to proceed.
Yes. If you would, sir, I'm partially deaf, so speak up so we can all hear you.
Oh,
okay?
yeah,
Sorry, thank you.
Now, I'm gonna stand over here, because I know we're trying to figure out, we're trying to figure out the best way to not cause people to have a neck problem from spinning their head around.
Yeah.
So but there might be some exhibits. Some members of color, I apologize, I still pronounce it with.
C-Car?
Okay. So, what was your role during the 2020 Republican primary?
Executive Director of the Ohio Republican Party.
What was your specific role related to the 2020 Republican primary or role?
And like job driven.
Not really, it was related to the primary in 2020. What were your specific roles like? Coordinating, field volunteers, whatever we're.
I mean, as executive director, I ran the day-to-day operations and, overseeing the political department, finance department, accounting, communications. And each one of those departments had a different role in the primaries, but helping, for the most part, generally speaking, helping endorse the candidates.
Helping endorse.
Correct.
When you say endorse by the.
The Ohio.
Where do you still work for the Ohio Republican Party? If not, where do you work now?
Ohio.
Would you describe yourself as well familiar with the structure of the Ohio Republican Party and supervision of its resources during that primary period?
Yes.
Would you characterize yourself as being well familiar with campaign finance reporting requirements, including any kind of reporting?
For the party, yes.
I'll expand on it by the model qualification of for the party.
We can go through it later, but it's, I have more experience on the party side of lines issues than kind of country and then one candidate side.
So if the party did something that the candidate needed to report at any time, I think you have to know what the rules were for candidates in order to know what the rules were for the party.
It's the candidate's responsibility about the campaign finance.
Now, we didn't look at exhibits out of Mr. Bray's exhibits, but it appears that there were a lot of communication to candidates of what in kind of expenses they should be reporting from the ORP.
Well, sure, yeah.
For the documents, so.
As part of our compliance, we would have to notify candidates or elected officials, giving them a kind contribution. So to that extent, yes, very much so.
Okay, so you're saying that it's the candidate's ultimate responsibility to file their report, but the Ohio Republican Party provides specific information to candidates on what that candidate's report is in kind coming from the Ohio Republican Party.
Yes, the party is required to notify candidates when
And then aside, are you aware of any notification of any kind ever given to Al Freeman?
No.
And, okay. What was your relationship with RJ?
Wouldn't say we can, I've talked to him once or twice.
Okay, so with what context did you talk to them?
I'm having a hard time, it would probably been over a conference call or something like that, but, generally speaking, I wouldn't say we can.
So what was his role in the 2020 Republican primary?
As a house campaign manager, worked for the HR system.
The HRCC, okay. And was that for specific candidates or what was?
No, it was for the HRCC. They would have been in charge of the day-to-day operations of which campaigns he was working for.
So who's that? Who are the individuals that are the HRCC that would be responsible for that?
At the time, for the speaker's team, that would have been, we worked with Jeff Longstreth, Megan Harden, Tommy Rawls.
So the HRCC was Jeff Long's, people within, principals within the HRCC were, I want to get this down right, Tommy Roll? Roll, yeah.
Can I interject just one thing? The HRCC stands for?
The House Republican campaign, campaign committee. It's changed a couple of times, so.
Yeah, as I understand, at the time it was that.
That was my understanding, yes.
You said Tommy Roll, Jeff Longstreth, was there another name you said?
Megan.
Megan Fitzmark. So you're saying those individuals, to your knowledge, work for the HRCC?
Correct.
Okay. Did you review party and HRCC finance filings? Your role as executive director of the ORP?
Party filings, but not HRCC.
Okay. Okay. And by RJ Mancini, to be clear, who was he paid by?
The Ohio Republican Party.
But his management was provided by these HRCC people, as far as you know?
Correct. Day-to-day, yes.
Okay, so I want you to look at, it's gonna be my exhibit 10B. So, you recognize this document?
Yes, I found
Okay.
Sorry.
Yes, okay. Can you read the second paragraph?
Are we talking on my?
Yeah, I kind of messed this up and where I handed you, probably did like the last page.
Yeah, the last, make sure.
The last page of what I handed you.
You just stopped me, I'm on the wrong part, but, the Ohio Republican Party did not specifically assign RJ Mancini or any other person to specifically work or volunteer on the Gene Schmidt campaign for state representative in the March 2020 Republican Party primary election.
Okay, so what did the result of the Ohio Republican Party specifically assign RJ Mancini to?
We kind-of his payroll, and some other employment and benefit stuff, as an employee, and it's a service we provide to both offices, the Senate and House offices. And then his job as House campaign manager, and he was there to manage House campaigns for endorsed candidates.
Okay, so the HRCC was only supposed to be using the resources for endorsed candidates?
Correct.
And the HRCC, to your knowledge, involved, or not necessarily all of them, but Tommy Rolfe, Jeff Longstreth, and Megan Fitzmark were the HRCC at the time?
Correct.
Okay, and did you get any reporting from RJ Mancini of what he was doing?
No, as I said, the day-to-day management was up to the HRCC, in conversation with Jeff Longstreth and Megan Fitzmark, we have general updates about the campaigns, but nothing specific to RJ is coming to mind.
Okay. When in your paragraph you read, it said, we do not specifically find RJ Mancini or any other person to specifically work or volunteer. Did you instruct people to volunteer on campaigns?
No.
Why did you put that word in there?
Like, you know, I think that there was. Yeah, just to be clear that we did not do that either.
Okay, so were you ever aware of resources that were volunteering for campaigns?
No.
Okay. So there's were there other people like RJ Mancini that you, that were in this deal where the HRCC was managing them?
Yes.
Can you remember any of those people?
Off the top of my head, no, but there would have been 7 to 8, 10. So,
7 to 8 or 10?
yeah, 8 to 10.
Okay, so somewhere between 7 or 10.
Yeah.
Probably, they're I'm not asking for a precise, but you can't remember the names. Can you remember the names of any of them?
Off the top of my head, no, sorry.
Okay. And you said you barely talked to RJ Mancini, but when you did talk, what did you talk about?
You know, like I said, I think it may have been on a conference call with all of those individuals. You know, and it would have been just kind of direction for what they could get their job responsibilities. And you know, probably been pretty, it was early on, when we brought them on about, you know,
So what were,
make phone calls, that kind of stuff.
so what were RJ Mancini's job responsibilities that you communicated as conversation?
Kind of a little bit, but, it was mainly we're not going to get the phone call. We're candidates.
For door candidate?
Yes.
Are you, so, you know where RJ Mancini, I don't know where they live there now, but where he lived at the time?
My understanding was southwest Ohio.
Okay, and, but he lives very, well, I don't know if he still lives there, but he lived very close to my house in Claremont County, but, so why would you have a field worker that was supposed to only be working for endorsed candidates in a region where either Alan Freeman or Jamie Smith were endorsed candidates of the Ohio Republican Party?
I think like a lot of people in Claremont County drive to Hamilton County to work every day. Fairly common.
Were you aware of him doing that?
Not specifically, yeah. But we did endorse candidates from Hamilton County, and briefly Claremont County, as well as, you know, counties in surrounding areas. So it's not uncommon for folks not to live, you know. Like, for instance, when I worked for the party, I lived in Kentucky, but looked in,
What was the relationship between JPL and Associates of the Ohio Republican Party during this period of the 2020 primary?
I worked with them and they function as, you know, part of speakers team in HRCC.
What would you say is the difference between, or how do you explain the difference between the HRCC, JPL and Associates, and Constant Content? In your mind?
Well, so I can't really speak to any of those organizations, but it was our understanding that those folks were in charge of the HRCC.
What's your relationship with Penny with Stephen Carroll?
Let's see, I believe actually, you know, I believe he might have. You know, I met Steve, it was after the primary in 2020, when we were doing the general election campaigns, is when I first met Steve.
Based on your knowledge of, field workers, now you're saying that this person within the HRCC and not you and so forth, but is that the work done for candidates that's being compensated, that, and I don't want to put any words in, but that's supposed to be reported by the candidates as an in-kind contribution?
Well, it wouldn't be from us because we were in-kind versus Steve. I'm sorry, I didn't hear that. Well, it wouldn't be from us, it would be, because we in-kind the services to the HRCC.
So I'm gonna use one of, Mr. Richter's exhibits.
Mr. Ricker, you have.
I don't think I have any.
Not that.
I'm sorry.
It's all right. I can do a variety of things, but I generally don't take 500.
Whereas,
I'm sorry, what are you looking?
exhibit M of yours.
There is a white notebook there with tab exhibits for which you can give it with that.
Yeah.
Evans and Mary.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So when you flip through into Exhibit N, there's documents in there that are from Tom Dane. Who's Tom Dane and what's your relationship with Tom Dane?
Tom Dane was is the accounting and operations director at the Ohio Republican Party, and he reported.
Okay, and then these pages that are like little letters back here, those are the Tom Dane's reporting to people what they should be. Not as fair with this.
Yes, so when we, when we make any kind of contribution to a candidate, we send them the letter like you can see.
So on one of the pages, the one that says February 28th, it has things to attribute to the HRCC. So it's one, the FT table at the bottom of it, like, I think it's still part of M.
Yeah.
Did you see that one? Everybody see like the one?
It's a letter to friends of Mark right here.
Okay, so this is Tom Dane, correct?
Yes.
And he's reporting both ORP contributions and HRCC contributions to the candidate, right?
And here's so, yes.
So you might help me understand better how the Republic ORP was involved in reporting HRCC expenses, any kind of contribution expenses to candidates, because it looks here like.
Yeah, I mean, it appears that it's something that Tom did. Yes.
So as executive director, you were just unaware that the Ohio Republican Party is also one candidates of that kind of contributions from the HRCC.
That's what I'm saying.
The best of your knowledge, Tom Dane would have received that information from the HRCC?
Based on the exhibits you showed, I mean, it looks like he worked with them, yes. He provided that to the candidate.
Okay, so there, I don't, okay, so I just want to correct that there was, you might not be familiar, Rob, with what exactly, but there, based on this, there was some connection between the HRCC and the ORP in terms of impact report. They weren't independent functions.
That's what it appears that is correct.
Okay, and he's the executive director of the Ohio Republican Party, you were not aware of that happening?
No.
Okay. All right, so let me get back to that. I don't know what stack I will do something. I need a little break for me to reorganize my stack of paper. So, okay. You mentioned Tommy Rolfe, Jeff Longstrip, and Megan Fitzmartin. I don't want to be redundant, but just for my clarification, could you, for each of those people, describe what your, not personal, but your working relationship was with each of them as the executive director of the Ohio Republican Party?
Sure. I mean, Joe, Jeff, on looking at matters that one important speaker and, on the campaign side of things. My understanding that Megan and Tom were involved with managing the House campaign managers. Yeah, most of my interactions were with Jeff.
So if Jeff were having, resources being provided by the ORP, we were using them on non-endorsed candidates, that would have been being done without your knowledge?
Correct.
Okay. And there was, and none of your discussions with RJ Mancini would have revealed to you that that's what he was doing?
Correct.
Okay. Would you think there were other cases where Jeff Longstrip or others didn't communicate to you stuff that was going on with your resources? Or were you using that in the stipulations that you had told them?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay. So I'm almost done. What was your relationship with Luke Householder?
I don't have a relationship with the Householder.
Were you aware of resources that were being deployed, on campaigns and being compensated involving Tommy Rolfe Jeff Longstreet and thing, as far that were not coming from the Ohio Republican Party?
Say that one more time.
Were you aware of resources that were being deployed by these HRCC people that were not coming from the Ohio Republican Party?
I'm just trying to make sure I've got what you're trying to add.
I'm sorry, it's not a fair question.
Well, yeah, no, that's what I'm trying, like resources from not from the Ohio Public Works.
Yeah, like, were you aware of, so I'm gonna give you an example, so I can help you clarify the question, but let's say you said you work with Jeff Longstreet, and you might have a discussion about, say, whatever resources, did it ever come up that, by the way, we're using resources beyond the resources you gave us on these campaigns?
No, not in the discussions, but it doesn't surprise me that would happen.
Were you aware of it happening or not aware of it happening?
Not aware.
Okay, and do you know Lou Counselor at all or not at all?
No, I never thought.
Okay. And Lou Counselor was never compensated by the Ohio Republican Party,
That's correct.
or to your knowledge?
To my knowledge.
If you're not, right, he never shows up on any campaign stuff, so, like our anything he does. Okay. So if, okay, so, those, I think that's all the questions I have.
Mr. Bry?
Thank you.
Mr. Seacrest.
Yes.
Is it accurate to say that the Ohio Republican Party did not specifically assign Archie Mancini, Luke Householder, or any other person to specifically work or volunteer on the county freedom campaign in 2020?
Yes, that's correct.
And in general, field workers paid by the Ohio Republican Party, do they need to be reported as any kind of contributions to the specific candidates?
No, we report those to the HRCC.
And in fact, if you take a look at the white notebook, and exhibits R, S, and T. So take a look at exhibit R.
I didn't want any.
Sorry,
R as in route. And that reflects some of the reporting by the Ohio Republican Party of any kind of contribution to the House Republican campaign.
it does.
And similarly in S. If you know what S is.
It looks like a list of in-kind contributions to the HRCP.
Right, and it says in the top left, ORP in kinds to HRCP.
Yes.
Is that something that came from the ORP or Ohio Republican Party or not?
I don't know.
Would you take a look at exhibit T as in is this another finding of Secretary of State which reflects the in-kind contributions from the Ohio Republican Party to the House Republican campaign? It is. And is that the form in which you publicly file the Ohio Republican Party during your tenure as executive director, publicly file reports and notices of in-kind contributions from the ORP to HRCC?
Yes.
And during your tenure as executive director of the ORP, the Ohio Republican Party diligently tried to report all of its in-kinds appropriately.
Yes, sir.
Did the Ohio Republican Party ever give a notice to the Ohio Freedom candidate of the in-kind contribution from the Ohio Republican Party to the Ohio Freedom? No. Did the Ohio Republican Party during your tenure ever send invoices to the Allen Freedom campaign? No. Have you ever seen a bill or invoice sent to the Allen Freedom campaign? No. Have you ever seen an in-kind notice sent to the Allen Freedom campaign? No. Would you agree you can't report what you don't know.
Yes.
Mr. Hicks, any redirect?
I do, like, very quickly direct. Did you make Tommy Rolfe, Jeff Longstreet, and Megan Fitzmartin aware that your resources were only to be used by ORP endorsed candidates?
Yes.
And so then it would be your belief that they didn't follow your instructions and used some of those resources to protect the other candidates? Okay. And yes, I appreciate Mr. Bray taking the through stuff, and I appreciate the clarification, but I just want to clarify something that's particularly pertinent to this case. Luke Householder was never part of that this. Right. It was, Luke Householder was unknown to you. It's being a resource that you could not have reported to him because he was outside of any system that you were involved with.
That's correct.
Any questions from any commissioners?
I've got one. On the exhibit T, Mr. Gray's exhibit T, I showed in kind contributions from the ORP for payroll taxes and insurance. Who were those payroll taxes and insurance for?
This looks like it's a little later than what we were talking about earlier, but it would have been House campaign managers for the general election.
If you will identify who those individuals are, that just paying their payroll taxes for.
I believe that it is on the expenditure side of things, for probably ease of compliance and reporting, and roll it up into one for each payroll period.
But you would still have a list of
Oh, yes,
of
absolutely.
employees that would be paid, that you're paying their payroll taxes and insurance.
Yes. I just can't remember. I'm sorry.
Any further question? I have a question. Was Mr. Craven an endorsed candidate of the Iowa Republican Party?
No.
Any other question? Go ahead, Mr. Ray.
Could you explain the relationship of the ORP to the HRCC and how you interacted with them and any direction that you gave explain the relationship between the ORP and the HRCC?
Yeah, we worked pretty closely together. Obviously the goal of those organizations is to get Republicans elected. So, we help each other whenever we can. Jeff and I would talk on a fairly regular basis about how the campaign was going. Obviously we would provide resources where we could, and, in kind contributions to the HRCC. So, we work together as a team.
Did you offer any direction to the HRCC as to how they went about conducting business?
I guess direction seems broad, but like we would talk about strategy and things like that, yes. But I mean, that didn't work for me, so directing it's probably a little harsh word.
One of the concerns here is obviously whether there was, as part of any kinds to HRCC, they were used for non-endorsed candidates. That's obviously the question. What did you do to try and follow up and make sure that that wasn't happening?
At the onset, when I'm trying to remember when we endorsed the primary in 2020, I believe it was February. At that point, I would have said, whoever is endorsed, we can have these folks working for it. They cannot do anything for an unendorsed candidate with the Ohio Republican Party. I was pretty clear and direct with the team, so I didn't feel the need to follow up with them. We worked very closely together and had a good relationship, and there was trust there. And I believe that they were, doing what we had talked about.
Okay.
I'm permitted to ask one more redirect or not?
Go ahead.
So, could you maybe think us a thorough consider? So originally in Claremont County, there was an endorsed candidate for District 65, which is the two that were put. And then that was repealed. Was there ever any in-kind reports made for Joe Gales in District 65 for activities prior to his endorsement being revoked?
I don't believe so.
Okay, that's all.
What's your understanding of constant contact?
Our interaction with them, they were a mail vendor.
They're what?
A mail vendor, they did direct mail services.
And how about JPL?
As far as I knew, they were, working for the HRCC, and I knew that was it. Here's not working with them quite a bit, but in the role of the HRCC.
Would you expect or anticipate that either Constant Content or GPL would be putting close to $300,000 worth of media coverage for a non-endorsed candidate?
No,
Are you aware of that, in fact, actually took place?
but yes, they're only based on
How did you learn of that?
the complaint here.
That was the first time you knew of it?
Correct.
That's all I have. Anybody else?
I think I want to clean up thing.
Mr. Breyer, yes, go ahead,
You
Don.
can go first.
Well, just because I just want to help you to clean up something that you might have missed about. So Content was a media vendor. I go, no, okay, hold on. I think you can stick with that, but I think a Mighty Group was the mail vendor. Constant Content was the TV media vendor. But if you have your understanding is that Constant Content was a mail vendor, then, okay, that's your understanding.
Yeah, that, for the ORP or, interaction with Constant Content, that comes for direct.
Okay.
They may do other stuff. but-
Okay, all right.
Mr. Breyer?
Just as a clarification, I understood from your response to some questions from Commissioner Tavares that you had the details on specific candidates that the field workers were working on. Are those details part of what is publicly filed, or was publicly filed in your tenure by the Ohio Republican Party with the as part of the Think and Finance statement?
No.
That's all. Thank you, sir. Appreciate your time today.
Thank you guys, appreciate it.
Mr. Hicks, your next witness?
I'm gonna go out of order, but I planned just because I think we can wrap it up, just person up by one, for your taking a break. But I want to call RJ Mancini.
Yeah.
You've got important duties here.
I just wanted to say that.
All right, we're gonna take a 5-minute break.
Sorry.
It's okay.
That's for the lid.
So if you're diabetic, get your candy bar.
Oh, no, we don't eat anymore.
Are you doing? They know you're not diabetic. That's not diabetic, always go into a car. Okay.
And I knew this was going to go on, I should have, but I didn't. Sitting on scary for much. I knew it could go on, but I didn't sit it.
That's what it is.
But I know.
Bye.
So you gotta just give up anyway.
I don't know.
That's what I heard. After I got out. I'm calling you.
Oh, very patriotic.
I think good thing about it is I do.
Yes, Mr. Norton said he didn't bring anything, so I'm gonna see how much I get.
That's the opening.
Yeah.
Martin. Yeah, Martin. Brian. Oh, you did,
It's
yeah.
back for everybody, but I
You don't
got
have
out
to
of
the
the house, I
flag.
got out of the house too late to get up from my office. Found out that people did internet back myself, practice. So I just got, I do like.
What's your window?
Right now, 11 to 8.
Okay. I like 11 to 7 is really good, but I think really bad.
What's the next year? October. Let's do it on the 28th. Continuation of this hearing. If our next hearing is the 28th, why don't we just do it on the continuation of the next hearing?
That would probably, that's what I would probably suggest.
I know I didn't have any dates in October, but this is when I locked up for this, so.
And that was, just general responses, like Dennis is on.
I apologize, I didn't respond to one, but it was easier for me.
That's fine. I can deal with those kind of things. I actually have some, but, I'm on, presumably I'm all receipts. Tasha, you had. Yeah, I know.
Like, but I was available on, what was it, the 21st? Oh, I'm sure.
Right?
Other than our commissioner, only the date.
I have a 7th. I thought it was on Friday.
It could be.
I listed the dates for everybody. And I did,
We can hold that in our next break. Yeah.
Chris, will you do us a favor and just close that door?
I only get one.
Fine, Mr. Hicks.
I can get all this.
Just come in, just so we, when we're ready, so kind of celebration of this.
Greater alignment, so. But I had my calendar.
but as I was looking at everybody's schedules, it looked like our best bet.
Sure.
Because there's enough stuff on there.
Our next meeting?
I mean, that's, there's,
Joyce.
it's just, that or afterward. Prior to that, when they were.
It's sort of a destination time. Trying to continue this kind of.
Yeah.
To see how long.
Right.
Otto, you ready?
Just got it.
You got everybody? Mr. Hicks, are you ready?
Yeah,
You may proceed, sir.
and I'm trying to go fast, I was talking to some witnesses in the hallway just about their schedule and trying to let people know the timing of things.
Appreciate that.
So I want to be quick with you, RJ, as quick as we can, to respect people who are sitting out there. So, if you just describe for me your,
First of all, we need to swear the
Yeah,
witness.
swear the witness.
Swearing firm that the testimony and the prayer will be the truth of business.
Mr. Mancini, you seem soft-spoken. Make sure you speak loudly so we can all hear. I'm partially deaf. I don't want to hear what you have to say, okay? I'll try. Thanks, sir.
so what, you were compensated by the ORP, correct?
Yeah.
You're working on, everything I'm going to talk about the March 2020 primary campaign. So you were compensated by the ORP in that campaign.
I believe that the campaign was the April 28th.
We time work, it was still March 17th, by April 28th, we never even put Chris in the border. Great. So I'm talking about the primary that you were, so we could say like you were paid by the ORP. Who from the ORP did you take direction from?
No one from the ORP.
Okay. Who did you take direction from?
Tommy Walt was sending me a walk out. And then I would just do that walk other than that, no direction.
Okay, and then who did Tommy Rolfe go for?
I don't know that.
have you looked at, it's gonna be exhibit 9. There's one right there. Because this is, you might recognize this, these are emails from your discovery production to me. You recognize it? It's not all of them, but you recognize it.
I don't remember each email, but I will.
Okay. So these are emails that we receive from Tommy Law giving you direction. Generally speaking, I'm not trying to correct you. You and others, correct?
Yeah.
Not every email. Where does it say Tommy Law?
WD political, yeah.
And what does it say right below that line?
JPL Associates, LLC.
So I asked you a second ago, who did Tommy Law work with, but you didn't know.
I didn't know, I'm not gonna try to guess. I didn't know you worked with, you know.
So when you were repeatedly getting email from somebody that had their title and company at the bottom, you didn't know who they worked with.
This was over a year and a half ago. I didn't remember what they said.
Okay, what was the extent of your interaction with Tommy Law? Like, you talk with them a lot, only get emails from them.
We talk weekly, and then other than that, that's pretty much emails I send out to you.
Okay, and, the other people that are copied on here, I'm looking at, and the set I gave you is, it says 167 at the bottom, and it's an email from March 12, 2020 at 11:31 a.m.
Just so we're clear, references House District 42, House District 65. and House
Yeah,
District
yes,
76, correct?
Okay, and I'm just concentrating, I just picked that one random, I just had my thing turned to that one. So there's a set of people of which you're one of them, that is sent to, you know who those other people are?
I do.
Could you just run through that list and tell me who you think they are? If you don't know one, you don't know them, but who they are, I mean, now you know.
The first one, Raymond Henderson. He was the campaign manager for Representative Prindell at the time. RJ 75 is myself.
Were you the campaign manager for somebody?
For Alan Drake. For Matthew T, I'm not sure. Brian Quinn for 88 is Brian Quinn, who was Representative Fraser's campaign manager. Will Armbruster was Representative, or then candidate Lincoln's. And then Luke J. House 23 at gmail.com, and then sending that as Luke Householder. I could be correct me if I'm wrong, but.
Okay, of those people, now, did you or do you ever work like as a legislative aide to a state rep or anything like that? In your past or present?
I do, currently.
Okay. Are there other people on this list that also work as legislative aides to state reps?
Yes,
Who on this list are you aware of? Just the ones you're aware of that work also as legislative aides to state reps?
Brandon Hendrickson and Ryan Wood.
Okay. What was your relationship with Luke Householder?
I had no relationship at the time, and then they said, hey, RJ, we're gonna send Luke Householder down for you. We're showing how to walk and whatnot.
Okay.
And that was the extent of it.
Okay. You said when we went through the list that you were the campaign manager for Alan Freeman. Can you describe what your duties were as the campaign manager for Alan Freeman?
I would door knock, they would send me the walk books, I would hit that
walk up that neighborhood, try to get them to put in an Allen Freeman for their state rep sign, and that was it.
Did you maintain his or any other candidate's Facebook or social media account in any way?
I was put on Representative, then candidate Gene Schmitz, and then I never posted it for Gene, I believe, and that was it. Gene Schmitz.
For the time you spent, would you say you spent almost all of your time on Alan Freeman, split time between Alan Freeman and other candidates? How would you characterize how you spent your time?
The vast majority of the time on then candidate. And
Other than Alan Freeman, what other candidates did you work for during that primary?
door knock, or then candidate Schmidt. Once or twice.
Okay. What's your relationship with Stephen Caraway?
He was one of my contacts for the campaign.
What kind of discussions did you have with Stephen Caraway for meetings?
We would just discuss just what I was hearing from people when I talked to him at the door. He asked me where I've been hitting recently, certain areas, pro Freeman or pro another candidate. And that was it.
Were you aware that, I don't want to say this the right way. Were you aware that Alan Freeman was not endorsed by the Ohio Republican Party? Were you aware that as an Ohio Republican Party, resources were only supposed to be working for endorsed candidates?
I did not. Did you say I did not? I did not. I'm sorry.
Did anybody, so nobody in the ORP ever communicated with you that you were only supposed to be working for endorsed candidates?
No, sir.
Were you aware that whether Gene Schmidt was endorsed by the Ohio Republican Party?
I was not.
You were not
I was
aware?
not aware.
So you don't know that she was not endorsed? Or do you know that?
I know. I knew Joe Gills was endorsed and then they, yeah, I told him that. Can't recall if she was or not, though, really.
So what was the job description that you were given by the Ohio Republican Party?
The Ohio Republican Party did not give me a job description.
Okay. Did you ever well, how frequently did you talk or meet with Alan Freeman?
Weekly,
How did you meet?
bi-weekly, I would say.
I would get confused on that. That means every 2 weeks you would meet, or
Yeah, I mean, it's not.
like every other week you
Correct.
would, versus twice a week? Okay, so every other week. When you would meet with Alan Freeman, who else would be present?
I can't say for certain a specific person, and Caraway was there once or twice.
How many total meetings during the cycle do you think you had with Alan Freeman? If I could characterize that, the chair was there once or twice, what percent of the time chair was there?
I can't recall. Meetings,
More than that, less than
I'd say around 10, maybe plus.
that. Did you, during the course of this time, being in the same area, you said you were told that, I believe you represented that you were told Luke Householder was coming down. And where did Luke Householder live during that period?
I don't believe the,
Where did you live during that period?
I don't know.
Okay. And how much time did you spend with Luke Householder outside of door knocking and other specific campaign activities?
No.
So I remember, I just want to clarify with you, because I don't, I met Luke Householder at a Republican Party function at RJ Center. I don't know what you're familiar with. Were you there also? I can't remember whether you were there with them also.
I was.
Okay, so at least that event you were with.
Yeah.
Yeah, but other than that, you didn't have dinner or hang out or?
No, sir.
Okay. Yeah, there, or you could find the exhibit, but there's pictures and agreement, you guys standing together, we're going door knocking, the type of stuff we put on social media. So those were more or less, didn't represent any, they spent a lot of time together, this was, everybody line up and take a picture and then we'll go our separate ways.
Correct.
Okay. What's your relationship with, Rob Sator? Seafloor?
I don't know who that is.
You don't know who it is? Have you ever had a conversation with Rob Sator?
No,
Who in the Ohio Republican Party hired you?
I don't know that is.
Don't know who hired you. Who gave you any, who in the Ohio Republican Party during that period did you know at all?
No.
No. So how, explain to me how you get hired, if I don't find this out for myself, you get hired where you don't know anybody that hired you, anybody that hired you, how did you even know you were hired?
I don't know.
You don't know the answer to how you knew you were hired for a job?
They asked me to do the campaign. I said yes, and now it's
Who were
Tommy Rolfe is the one that called me and asked me to do the campaign.
they? Tommy Rolfe is the one that, did he make you an offer to come to work doing campaign door knocking?
I don't believe it is an offer. But hey, we would like to go on the campaign trail.
Who talked to you about how much you would be paid?
I didn't have a discussion about that.
Who did you submit were you the one you do like a W-2 to?
I don't recall. It's over a year and a half ago.
Okay, so you don't recall having any discussions ever with Rob Seafloor?
No.
Okay, I'm gonna play a video for you. RJ. And my exhibit is number 24.
I just want you to.
I'll pause it a couple times here. You recognize that vehicle? 24. 24 on my side. Yeah. So you recognize that as the householder? Yeah. Right, or whatever. Okay. So you recognize, and drug.
Yeah.
I'm gonna pause there for a second. I went quick there, but did you recognize the location of what you saw before or not? Okay. You recognize that person? Okay.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that last part. Luke Hassel. Thank you.
I think if it's shown still, we did it before, but I have a couple different.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's true. I didn't actually, if you could show me that, because I didn't print that page out, what I brought with me. So this is just shows them pulling out of the parking lot, so. Yeah, on the cover sheet I had for exhibit 24, there's a still picture from this. Okay, so you can see, and it's here too, it's on the screen. So you recognize.
I believe that's the day then in East State, Ohio.
Okay. So this was not a serious question, but I don't, you've never stayed up a day in East State, Ohio. So, okay, did you and Luke Householder ever talk about, who was paying for him to stay at the Days Inn?
No.
Okay, do you have no knowledge of who was paying for him to stay at the Days Inn? So you never developed any friendship or camaraderie with Luke Householder?
We were friendly with each other, but they're doing a good job.
Now, when there was other than voters, you wanted to make friends with voters. So when you were door knocking and getting this direction from Tommy Rolfe, did you and Luke Householder then decide who was going to cover what, and who decided how you were going to split up the door knocking for Alan Freeman?
I would get the walkbook and I would try to figure out what's the best walkbook for the day for us and where we need to go.
We would ride together and I would drop them off at a certain point. I would park my car and then we'd meet back up and the extent.
And was it your understanding he was doing this work for free or as a volunteer? There are who pay.
I didn't use them.
You didn't ask, okay? Who told you that he was coming, he's gonna come and do his work?
I don't recall.
Or you don't recall Tommy Roll, one of the people you met that they gave supervision?
I would assume Tommy, but I'm not gonna say that. But I guess.
Okay, and then, I'm gonna look real quick here to the home, I just wanna make sure it's placed on the table. In exhibit 24 of mine. 24. Oh, I'm sorry, I said totally wrong exhibit number. It's exhibit 2. Which is my original affidavit. So in exhibit, that page, I'm looking at page, it says page 6 in one of the two affidavits, it's the one with the picture of them all standing together. Oh, it doesn't like our one. Look at over the shoulder of this. So those people in that picture, can you kind of call out who they are? Or elaborate?
First one is Luke Householder with the hat on. The second one with the hat on and the glasses is myself. Other than that,
You don't know those.
I don't know those other than Alan.
So who were those other people then, or what was the context of that picture? You didn't know.
I can't recall. I was over a year and a half ago. I'm sure they were friends of Alan or I'm not gonna guess that, but
Was it, do you think that you went from there to door knocking? Do you remember? That's what a post implies, that we were going door knocking.
yeah, I believe I went door knocking.
Okay, and those people, who directed them as to where you were knocking? That up there.
I had Tommy create extra walk books and I gave them the walk books.
And you were the one telling those people where to go door knock, but you don't know that other people were.
Correct.
Okay. What's the what is the HCRC? What's that right? Correct me.
HRCC.
HRCP.
Question?
Yeah, what's the HRCP? And what was their role in relation to your working around the agreement?
I don't know.
So did anybody ever represent themselves? He was representing a part of the meeting, that's that right?
Not that I recall.
Did anybody ask you for any reporting for purposes of candidates being able to report any kind of contributions, like where you were spending the time?
No.
Okay. And I just want to make sure I'm correct on it. The only two candidates you worked for were Alan Freeman and Gene Smith.
Correct.
Okay. Did you ever discuss with Alan Freeman, it could be banter, it could be whatever his TV commercial?
I can't recall.
You can't recall when you discussed TV commercial with the candidates?
Over a year and a half ago, I can't recall if I'm going to go to bed and talk about it.
Did you see his TV commercial?
Yes, I really.
Okay. How frequently would you say that the TV commercial ran? A lot, a little?
Not any more than any other.
Okay. So I'm pleased I don't know if that means any other commercial. Did you ever talk with Alan Freeman about his direct mail?
No.
Did you ever see his direct mail pieces from the campaign versus from receiving any of your personal mail?
No, I never saw a direct mail. All I saw was the local there. Gave to the voters.
And where did you get that literature from?
Alan had some, Caraway had some, and when they say, hey, do you need any more lift? I say, yeah, and they give me box, sure.
If you were guessing between, it sounds like you had a little bit of a, directing, like Luke, a little bit helping them to know what, those other people. if you were guessing, how many pieces of literature you gave away, just order of magnitude?
I would
Your work.
object, I would object to asking the witness to guess, that's not a proper question.
It's the same.
You would estimate how many pieces of literature you believe that were given out part of the dual law program that you involved with.
So how many pieces of what I gave to
I don't know, but you said you gave people's packets for them to go give out. So, can you split up with who household or who is gonna cover what? So I'm asking you for an overall estimate.
How many
As
was
a campaign manager, how many pieces of literature do you think were given out for the dual law program?